You are about to enter the Shockwave Skull Sessions podcast, heard exclusively on RoadrunnerRecords.com/Skull Sessions. And now, here is your host, Bob Nalbandian.
That right there, one of my all-time favorite metal songs. That, of course, is the intro to The Writ by Black Sabbath, an absolute epic. And we've got an amazing episode for you guys. We got the legendary Black Sabbath drummer Bill Ward joining us on this episode, along with our Shockwave Skull Sessions regular, Mr. Monte Conner, head of A&R for Roadrunner Records, as well as David Teds. We've had David on a previous episode, I believe the Ye Old Martin episode. I like to refer to David as the metal guru. I don't believe I've met anyone that knows so much about classic hard rock and metal than David Teds. He joins us here as well, and we're going to get right to this because this is the longest Skull Sessions episode yet. It's going to clock in at about 2.5 hours. So kick back, crack open a beer or two or three, and enjoy this episode. But before we do get started, I want to let you know this is the Shockwaves Skull Sessions podcast. It is available at roadrunnerrecords.com/skull sessions. You could listen to all the episodes on that site. You could also download each episode into your computer from that site. You could also check out the Shockwave Skull Sessions podcast on iTunes, as well as several other podcast directories. If you go to iTunes, just go to the iStore, type in Shockwaves. You'll see both my podcasts, the Shockwave Skull Sessions, as well as the Shockwaves Hard Radio podcast. Subscribe to both of them. And if you want to send me an email, please do so. I do read and answer all emails personally. You could write to me at shockwaveskullsessions@gmail.com. I do want to mention that Black Sabbath, actually Sanctuary Universal, just reissued the Black Sabbath Paranoid CD. And by all means, this is a must-have CD for any Black Sabbath fan. It features the entire Paranoid CD remastered, as well as some incredible bonus tracks, some great rare tracks, some great outtakes, some amazing stuff. Also, Sanctuary Universal will be releasing the debut self-titled Sabbath record, as well as Masters of Reality, and both those also in a special bonus package, which will also include several rare outtakes, some great stuff. It's just amazing to hear some of these tracks, how they were originally written and how they were transformed into a metal classic. Some great stuff. Definitely check that out. And definitely check out Bill Ward's website at billward.com. That is the official Bill Ward website. Some great stuff there. You could also check out his radio show through the website. He's got some links up there. I believe the direct link to the radio show is www.bbc.co.uk/radio1. That is the number 1/rock show. So check that out. But let's go ahead and get right into it. Bill Ward discusses the first decade of Black Sabbath, all the albums from the debut up till Never Say Die. Bill talks about the recording process of all of the albums, including the turmoil they went through with a lot of the records in the mid-'70s. And toward the end of this podcast, Bill and Monty go off on a lot of the newer metal bands. I got to tell you, man, I have never met a musician, or I should say a classic rock/metal musician that is so in tune with the metal scene today. Both Bill and Monty talk about a lot of the new releases from bands like Lamb of God, Opeth, Slipknot, Mastodon, and many others, as well as Gene Hoglan and other drummers. Some great stuff. That's toward the end of this podcast. But without further ado, let's get right to it. This is the legendary Bill Ward, Monte Conner, David Tedds, and myself. You are listening to the Shockwave Skull Sessions. This is the great Black Sabbath discussion. We've got Monte Conner, David Tedds, and the legendary Bill Ward. What is up, gentlemen?
Hello.
This is Monty speaking. Yeah, I've been on a bunch of these podcasts before, but never with the artist on the line. So I have to admit, it's a little nerve-wracking having the artist there while you're discussing his record. So it's going to be a bit of a different experience, especially someone like Bill, who's just one of my heroes. I mean, I wouldn't be in the music business without all the great stuff Bill has done, and it particularly thrills me as well because I read, Bill in magazines, and I know that he's a huge metal fan and very, very up on modern music. So it blows my mind that he listens to bands like Slipknot and Type O Negative that I signed. So this is pretty special for me.
Well, I think it speaks for all of us. I think we all were influenced by Bill's works. I'm sure David has been as well. David, you've seen Black Sabbath since the very beginning, correct?
Well, first of all, I want to clarify what Monty said. What he really means is he's nervous because usually when he's discussing the artist's work, he gets to badmouth the artist at the same time. I've seen every Sabbath tour from Paranoid onwards. I saw the very first tour in Birmingham, England, at Birmingham Town Hall. Most of the rest of the ones in the 70s I saw in Detroit at Cobo Hall. Yeah. And then the ones afterwards out here in Los Angeles.
Right.
And I loved them all.
This is something I've been looking forward to for months, and let's get right into it. Let's start from the beginning, Bill. Why don't you kind of start us off before the first album came into play, and how the band developed? Coming from Birmingham, how you, Tony, Ozzy, and Geezer got together and created Black Sabbath.
Tony and I, as I'm sure you guys know, we'd already been working together for some considerable time. And the bulk of the music that Tony and I were playing was of a blues rock feel with some jazz involved as well, So we'd had our roots kind of planted inside of jazz or more classical music and definitely American blues music. I think that came to a head when we continually listened to the Blues Breakers album with John Mayall. And really, literally, it got. I'm sure I probably had at least 5 or 6 copies of that album, where we were listening to that a lot. I think with Geezer, it's more like I was attracted to him as a person before he played a note. Tony and I were from Aston, and so was Geezer, and so was Ozzy, for that matter. And it's a pretty industrial area, kind of a rough and tough rumble area. But Geezer was, I was attracted to him because he looked so different in the way that he dressed, in the way that he was. I really took a real liking to the guy, and I hadn't even spoken to him yet. He was a person of interest, I guess.
It didn't have anything to do with the fact that he used to wear a dress around town, did it?
No, that came later. No, he was just he dressed just really completely different from anybody that I'd ever seen before, and he certainly stood out, especially in Aston. He's looking like that, looking like he was looking. You were almost beckoning to be beaten up or something, But we met Geese playing in the nightclubs that we visited and also played in ourselves. I met him in the kind of the green room, if you like, of a nightclub, and that was where I really first officially got to know him. And he was just incredible. I instantly felt involved with him. There's something about him that was just really magic. And up until now, he was still playing rhythm guitar with a band called the Rare Breed. So the eventuality was that we all knocked on Ozzy's door some months later, looking for a singer. And the same thing happened with Oz for me. I'd only known him for about 15 minutes, and I really liked him a lot. He's like that, He's a very, very likable person, And that was we just got together and we jammed out just some like what would be the favourite blues jams of the day. I think we were still playing things like just a couple of things from John Mayall's Blues Breakers, Hideaway, and there was a couple of other things that we were playing. and then we were picking up on Ainsley Dunbar's Warning. So we were just like, kind of like grooving like that, and trying to, to try to play in clubs and what have you, which didn't actually work out very well at all. So,
Monty, didn't you send over a song sample of Ainsley Dunbar's Warning, correct?
Yeah, Bill, I'm a big fan of like the whole UK blues boom. I love all that stuff,
okay.
and I know that. Yeah, I know basically that you guys were, like a lot of bands at the time, were heavily influenced by that, and it really wasn't kind of until you guys wrote the song Black Sabbath that kind of shone the light for like the future of the band. But you can definitely hear the blues influence all over the first record on tracks like Warning. So anyway, through Warning, I actually went back and discovered the Ainsley Dunbar Retaliation, and so I have the version of that song as well, where I think Ozzy wound up changing the lyrics, right, David, on that?
Yeah, I think he changed them slightly to make them more ominous, really.
Right. But yeah, no, I'm a big Ainsley Dunbar Retaliation fan, and through Warning, that actually got me to discover that band years later.
Okay. Yeah, we liked Ainsley, and it suited us. That pace seemed to suit us. It left plenty of room for Tony. That was actually like where Tony would perform a solo, and that solo could run maybe 20 or 25 minutes.
Right.
Keep in mind that we were playing in the clubs in Europe, and they literally wanted like 8 shows a day. So things that we were playing always ended up in huge solos or a drum solo or a bass, so just to make up the time,
Right.
That's nearly 8 hours a day of playing the show, so.
Yeah, and you guys basically wrote the Paranoid record in a situation like that, like while you were playing in Germany, just, during sound check and so forth, doing all those shows. That's when you basically wrote that record, correct?
Yeah, a lot of the ideas did develop. It was at the big club in Herschen, which is in Switzerland, that NIB was born. We pretty much, gradually put that together somehow. There was on one occasion we were so kind of, lethargic, I guess. It was quite monotonous, playing, from 12 until 1 in the morning, and that's 12 noon till 1 in the morning.
Wow.
And we, sometimes we would get a little bit too high. On one particular occasion, we were really very, very high. We just got some new Afghani black come in, and anyway, we Terry and myself and Ozzy, we were on stage ready to go, and we couldn't find Tony. And Tony came in to the room, dragging his guitar by the neck. We thought, that looks like trouble already, And anyway, we got in, we got him on the stage, and then we figured we'd start out with NIB, but we couldn't get off the first 8 bars. We kept going round in a circle. Everybody forgot the song, and man, we were destroyed at that point of the day. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and we're so gone. And Tony was looking at us, going, "What's the next? What happens next?" So all we were playing was da 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 da. Nobody knew how to pull out, But we found it. We went out and we played it down, so that was pretty cool. But it was hilarious. I mean, we were absolutely busting up, because we were just so gone, But NIB, was written. The song Black Sabbath was actually written at the Aston Community Centre, and that was written in the morning. I think it was about 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning, and Tony came up with those huge riffs, and we all more or less knew where to put it, where to go. We by this time we'd been together for a little while, and so we reacted to each other, and we were getting tight. We were getting tight all the time. We were playing nearly every day together, so. And on the days where we weren't playing, we were all together anyway. So,
right.
We never really left each other's side.
Did it feel when you wrote the song Black Sabbath that okay, now we're onto something like this is new, this is our future direction? Was it this huge moment for the band, pretty much?
Yeah. I mean, I had no idea what it was going to do or where it was going to go or any of that, but I felt like a real sense of accomplishment. I thought, oh my God, we've really got something great here, and I really felt, again, it was going to be great live. We were going to do it live, and, when we did that ending used to be quite long. It kept building and building and building and building as much as you can do with drums and bass, so that we could support Tony, on that end solo there. it was a big sense of accomplishment.
Was there like a scene in the Aston or Birmingham area? Because I know, obviously a lot of the classic bands, members of Deep Purple, Zeppelin, you name it, came from that area. Was there clubs and places to play around there, or did you have to go to London? I know you went to Germany, like, a lot of bands, including the Beatles, had gone to Germany. Did you go to Germany first and then come back, or did you kind of build up a local scene in the Birmingham area, or how did that work?
We started to build up a following, if you like, up in northeast England. That would be around Workington, Whitehaven, Espatria, all the little towns in the Lake District, and just north of that, Whitehaven, Carlisle. Primarily that following came from an original band that Tony and I were in, which the band was called Mythology. And so when we went back up there as Earth and as Black Sabbath, we were already had quite a following. They really, really loved all the bands that came up that were playing, much harder stuff. They liked metal a lot. It was a very underground metal thing that was going on in northern England, in northeastern England at the time. There were places to play, but we started playing the London clubs. I think in '69, I would say. '68, we were still playing in Germany and in northeast England. But we started playing the club. The big break, of course, for us was being able to play. We actually played at the Star Club as well, by the way, on the Reeperbahn, which was where the Beatles had played as well. That was a kind of a feather in the cap, That's kind of like a chevron, It's like, oh yeah, and we played the Star Club, and all that stuff. So, but it was nice being in such a hallowed place, where so many other artists had played. The Marquee Club in London was when we went there. I know we were all kind of a bit. I think we were a little bit scared, a little bit kind of like, oh, what's going to happen? And we really were quite. Quite scruffy. We were our taste in clothing and the way we looked was a bit suspect, to say the least. We showed up and John G, who was the club manager, the club owner, the boss, looked at us and went, "Oh no, we can't have you. This is like ridiculous." But it was the real deal, because we really were actually very, very poor, and we really didn't have any clothes or I think the best we could do was a leather jacket or a pair of jeans with our ass hanging out of it, So that's what we were like, and we showed up, and then we fired up, and that was kind of like before even our first gig. It was like before the first time we even played that night, when we fired up, just checking our stuff. It was like, we're too loud, you can't do that, But we came through all those musician nightmare barriers, if you like, and we were regulars at the Marquee Club, and of course that was an enormous launching pad for us. There were places in Birmingham as well that were very good, underneath the railway lines, and there were some good clubs where you could actually play your ass off and play all the all-nighters as well. So yeah, there was loads of places to play.
Bill, this is David. It was Mother's Club in Birmingham at this point?
Mother's was the most established club. It was in Erdington in Birmingham, and it was the most established club. One of the bigger bands to go through there was Cream. Yeah, Canned Heat did a stint there. And a matter of fact, I think that you, David, wasn't it you that, or maybe I've got it wrong. I thought that you'd done some work with Canned Heat.
Yes, actually, yeah. I did a best of album for EMI a couple of years back. I have to say I was ably assisted by Monte Conner here, too. Monte's probably even a bigger Canned Heat fan than I am.
Yeah, they're one of my favorite bands, period. Like, right up there in my top 5 with Sabbath, so, yeah.
Oh, great. Okay, yeah. I love them, too. The thing that impressed me the most was they were doing their loading in the afternoon in Erdington, and they had big 18-wheeler trucks, and that impressed the shit out of me, because at that particular time, I can remember we were always watching all the other bands, we just wanted to know what was going on all the time. And when Canned Heat showed up with them 18-wheeler trucks, it's like, oh my God, And they were very, very loud in that club. Mother's was where we all went, I guess, if you like, all the heads went, and that's where we got to see, everything that couldn't be played anywhere else, like Cream. I'm sure the 10 Years After were down there at one point, and we had there was a whole scene down there, and that was the best club to go to outside of the Marquee in London. Yeah, who remembered that then? Who said Mother's?
David.
David said Mother's?
Yeah, but I was born in Coventry, Bill, so I've been over here most of my life, but I remember some of these clubs being advertised from when I was a kid.
Okay. You got the edge.
I got the edge. At this point, Bill, was it around this time that Tony got this offer to join Jethro Tull?
Yeah, because we've been playing around, and I know Ian, liked Tony's playing. That came as a real, oh shit, you just like when you feel like you're accomplishing something, and then Tony, but it was right, and we all, we all wished him well, even though it didn't feel very nice, but he had to go and do what he had to go and do. But I think it was at the time as well, and I think I'm being fair to Tony. I'm not trying to be. I don't want to. I have tough times sometimes speaking on behalf of the other guys, But I think it's pretty common knowledge that Tony was already on his way, if you like. He was already finding himself and had been finding himself as a musician for some considerable time. So I think for a moment there, it was like, let me go to Tull. But Tony was already like who he is. And so to go to Tull and be the lead guitar player in Tull, I could see how that could quickly turn sour, because he was already established. So it's like, hey, I'm on this road, and then it's like almost like taking a diversion and going to work with Ian Anderson and the rest of the guys, and then finding out just like, hey, it really doesn't work here for me. Right. So we were very relieved when he came back. He came back with a whole bunch of input about how the way that they went about doing things and the way that they, worked in the day, and really got things done in a very organized way. And being somewhat undisciplined and unorganized ourselves, we took to, I'll speak for myself, I took to it somewhat reluctantly, became far more willing after a short period of time. I could see how we were starting to feel and look and sound, and we were tightening up as a band, so he came back with some very good stuff.
Right, so he learned, I guess he learned from seeing the discipline that Ian Anderson had with the rest of the band, that they rehearsed on a regular basis, that, they took it as a real serious enterprise. It helped, I guess, bring some professional attitude into Sabbath after Tony seeing that.
Yes, very much so, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've read like every Sabbath book on the planet. I know David has as well. Probably you too, Bob. Yeah. So yeah, this is stuff that I've read as well.
Well, let's get into the first record. I know Universal Sanctuary just reissued the Paranoid record, and I know the others are at least Masters of Reality, the first album. Yeah, I think those first three are going to be coming out.
Yeah.
Right. Now, I know I've had the opportunity to hear some of the demos and stuff from them. Real interesting stuff, and I think it's great the fact that this is the first time. I don't know if David's heard these before, but the first time I think most people in public have heard any of these old demo tapes and the work tapes. And let's talk about when you first went in the studio, Bill, and did the first record, and how you hooked up with Warner Brothers and what that experience was like.
I think at the time, before we went into the studios, we were working with Jim Simpson. He was our manager. And for me, everything was kind of almost like a blur. I was really enjoying playing gigs. We all were. We would go into the office and say, well, is anything going on? And we had to, I think it was Tony Hall Enterprises. I think Tony was inside the first album. But Tony Hall was a DJ, and I really liked him. He came from Radio Luxembourg, which was kind of a free kind of rock station. They played a lot of really good stuff too. I kind of liked, where he was coming from. But it was more of a blur. It was like, and then suddenly it all came out, and you've got like 2 days or 3 days or whatever at a studio in London. And it's like, okay, I can't remember, that there was like a step-by-step kind of... I'm sure there's a lot of work behind this, but I was not aware of it. All I remember was going into the office and listening, and it's like, now we can get you some studio time. There's all this wheeling and dealing going on. When we arrived at the studio, I was completely impressed. I played in a few studios before, but they were very small studios in Birmingham, and now we were in London, and I think our bands, I love our band. We just got in, and it was just like, it's like we lived in the studios, you know. It was almost like we were just destined to be in the studios. We showed up with all of our show, laid everything out, you know. There wasn't a whole lot of figuring out sound that I can recall. It's like, okay, play your bass drum, okay, yeah. I think we just laid it out like we would do a show. The band was very much in a touring feel. So going into the studio and trying to record, there wasn't enough time at least for me to go, oh, you know, how do you play in a studio, you know, or what do we need to work out here, you know, just do studio prep. For instance, like I would now, I would like prep for the studio and things like that. So there wasn't any of that. This was a real raw live band that was going into the studio, and somebody had to get it, you know. Somebody had to record that. So I didn't know, you know, anything about being quiet or things like that. I know that I was on my blats and some of my crashes. They would run through the meters and run hot, you know, underscoring the actual snare shots, you know, in technical terms for a second. And, you know, when Tony fired up, it was just like, you know, the whole studio would shake. And, you know, it's like, okay, you know, how do you capture that? Recently, I made a quote in another interview, you know, in hindsight, we ought to have lassoed the whole band and just pulled it in and hoped that the mics got something. And I think that would be my best way, you know, to describe what it was like trying to do that. But somehow, some way, Tom Allen and Roger Bain did a very respectable job. And they were able to, you know, get us on record. I was amazed, actually, by the cymbal sound on Ainsley's song, on Warning. And you can actually hear some of the jazz drops, both on Black Sabbath, the song, and Warning. It was quite amazing that they got that kind of finite precision, you know. So I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm talking too long on these questions.
One thing I always wanted to know about that record is Ozzy seems to be singing in a much deeper voice than he did later on. Was that something conscious or accidental? How did that come up? You know, he's just singing in a lower register than he would later.
Well, it's probably where we put the keys as well, you know, and also our stringing. And, you know, we changed our stringing as time went on, and, you know, a lot of things moved around. But that was the nature. That was the nature of the last 4 or 5 years of some of the bands in the clubs, where he had almost this very strong blues voice.
Right.
And so it wasn't shaped into, you know, where Paranoid was yet. You know, it still had it's like we're still coming off the street, you know. And I think that's what you might be hearing. It's that's a great observation.
And now Paranoid came out shortly after that. Did you actually have Paranoid written around the same time as the first album?
We already had some songs for Paranoid. You know, it's almost like the writing was going on daily, you know. I think to set the stage, the band never left each other. We literally were with each other every single day and for very long periods of time. So if we weren't on the stage, we were in the car, we were coming back from somewhere or going somewhere. You know, Tony would always have bountiful of riffs and what have you. You know, we were ready to build our rhythm sections and do whatever we had to do to support each other in a musical sense. We took a small break from touring, and we went down to one of our favourite places where we do a lot of writing, which is in the Monnow Valley in Wales. And we went to a little house that we used to love. We still do. And that's where we wrote some of the heavier songs. We wrote Sweet Leaf for sure in the Monnow Valley. I think War Pigs basically came out of jams. You know, Tony would have that huge chord, and then I'd do that kind of jazz hat, if you like, and you know, we would just put in the blends together as we went along. The only time that I remember where it was a concentrated effort, as if to do an album, was when we were in the Monnow Valley. I guess we might have spent maybe 10 days or 2 weeks there. So again, we were all living on top of each other. Lyric ideas, all kinds of things were flowing, melodies, drum parts, you know, great bass parts. So it was all being shaped. And I'm not exactly sure when we recorded Paranoid, to be honest. I know it was in 1970, but I'm actually not sure when it was recorded. But that was like I think we had 5 days or 6 days on that one in the studio.
And that was the same team as the first record, Roger, Bain, and Tom Allen?
I'm sorry?
Was that the same team as had done the first record, Roger, Bain, and Tom Allen?
It was Tom and Roger again, yes.
Now, it's interesting you mentioned a Sweet Leaf. Again, listening to these remasters of Sweet Leaf, to hear the way the band evolved, lyrically especially, it sounded like, Ozzy put lyrics together, and it was about a man and a woman getting married, and then it evolved into a song about marijuana. And Geezer was so cutting edge with the lyrics. I mean, take a song like War Pigs, for example. No band had took such a heavy political stance, anti-war stance, up until that song. Did you see that, not just musically but lyrically, that Black Sabbath were becoming this real groundbreaking, rebellious, so to speak, rock band?
I couldn't see. I just love the music, I don't, to be quite honest, I don't know whether any of us could see it. I know that Terry was writing some of the best things he's ever written in his life. I'm not saying that he doesn't write good things now, but the first three albums, those early years, were just outstanding. But I just wasn't conscious of what we were doing. I think what happened when I started to become a little more conscious is when we started playing War Pigs on stage in America, and especially coming to the Vietnam War was still, of course, raging away, but it was time, an ending was in sight in Vietnam, and so when we played War Pigs on stage, we had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of vets who used to come right down the front, and they would be in their wheelchairs, and amputees and guys that got totally fucked up in the war, and, God bless them. And we would play, with all our heart that song, and they would just love it. They just loved War Pigs. And that's when I realized we were having a tremendous impact throughout, and a political impact and an impact emotionally on, it's through the live audiences that were showing us that and how it was affecting them, So, yeah, I'm sorry.
No, as I say, I'm just astounded by your memory, Bill, about all this. And I kind of want to go back. I know this is around the time, David, you saw the band in England, correct?
Yeah, I saw around the time of Paranoid at Birmingham Town Hall, and this sort of goes into something I wanted to ask Bill, because if you look in the center fold of Volume 4 and that shot of the band from behind there, that's Birmingham Town Hall, right?
That's correct. That's absolutely correct.
I mean, that's about 25 rows deep with a little balcony. So going from, I've always wondered what it must have been like from going and playing places that size, they're just several hundred people, to coming over to the States and playing suddenly for 18,000 people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is definitely a transition.
Yeah.
Fortunately, when we first came into the States, we were playing, like maybe 4,000, 5,000 seaters. We got adjusted to that. We got used to that. It felt like we were in a club. And we were playing, all of Great Britain's largest theatres by then, and also in Holland and Germany and just everywhere in Europe. So we were starting to get to be like really big gigs. And there's almost a feeling of that same great feeling that you get when you're playing in the clubs. And so I would feel, as a drummer, I would feel perfectly comfortable in front of 5,000 people. At first, for me as a drummer, it was an uncomfortability. I had to depend completely on microphones around my drums. I now had to depend on a PA, and I also had to depend completely on monitors. So it became different. The energy was still brilliant, and the band I felt was just great, and I was having a blast too. But there were some other things that were challenging me, especially when I first started playing, 5,000 and above, 10,000, 15,000. I thank God for the crews, we had great crews, and it's the men that you have on the road with you that really do make the day, God bless them.
Now, Bill, your first tours in the States, that was with Grand Funk, right? And the James Gang were some of the early ones?
We played with the James Gang up in the, I forgot his name.
Joe Walsh?
What was the name?
Joe Walsh?
No, not Joe.
Joe.
Bill Graham's West...
Fillmore.
Fillmore, thanks.
Yeah.
Fillmore West. And so, but we went up there, and of course one of the gigs that we did was with the James Gang, and they were headlining, and I got a kick out of that, and I like the James Gang. We also played with Arthur Lee and Love, and that was another one where we supported the show. So, but with Grand Funk, we only played with them one time, and that was at the Forum. We went down pretty well at the East Town Theatre in New York, and I think everybody got the word, so they kind of found a slot for us supporting Grand Funk Railroad. So that was our first appearance at the Forum, and that was 1970.
So that was in Los Angeles. Wow. Now, Bill, you had mentioned, I remember the first time we had interviewed you a few years ago, my buddy Mark Miller and I, we had talked about some of the shows at the Fillmore East in New York, and you had mentioned how the reaction, people were like, they didn't know what to expect. They were just sitting down and didn't know what to expect. And then by the end of the show, you got the people all riled up, and you said basically Tony had to bang on his guitars, and you were doing anything you guys can to get the crowd riled up, and by the end of the show you just won them over. Was that the reaction with a lot of places when you first started? People just didn't know what to expect, and then by the end of the show they were just like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah, it was a little bit like that in some places, but it's amazing how all that spreads. It spreads like wildfire. In New York it was a little bit cold, just like as in London, in the sense that let me change that word. London. I don't want to use London, but in England everybody'd seen like the very best of everything. So I think there was an expectation sometimes from the audience. It's like, oh well, show me something, And there was times when the audience were literally just sitting there, and we weren't used to that. We're used to an audience that participates. That's when headbanging first started. We used to interacting with the audience. We used to saying, fuck you, and so there's a whole lot of that kind of stuff. In America, it was kind of like that in the beginning. It was a bit sticky and a bit cold. But the audiences, especially once the East Town Theatre was done, the audiences were really warmed up to that. I mean, by the time we got to the Forum in Los Angeles, there was no problem, to be honest. We just went on stage and everybody just went fucking nuts. It was almost like we were established before we got there, kind of a deal, but we didn't know it, We were kind of like the last to know. Like when somebody mentioned Cobo Hall earlier, and that happened to be one of our favourite gigs, Cobo Hall in Detroit. And of course they knocked it down now, but playing Cobo, man, was just like, that's like dynamite. And the crowds in Detroit were just insane. I mean, all over Philly, where have you, and Texas, they're all nuts down there. They fucking love heavy metal music in Texas.
I'm curious, back then, obviously Black Sabbath didn't get any radio play, at least in the States, and very little media support. Was it just a tour? But, you were selling tons of records, you were playing all the big places. How did you guys get your following?
Can I cut in from a listener's point of view here?
Yeah.
In Detroit, at least, on the FM stations, which were at that point, they weren't programmed, it was what the DJ wanted to play. We heard plenty of Sabbath in Detroit on FM stations, especially, War Pigs, Paranoid, Sweet Leaf. That's one of the reasons why Detroit used to go so crazy when Sabbath showed up.
Monty, were you growing up in New York? Because I grew up in LA, and I don't ever remember hearing Black Sabbath apart from maybe Paranoid when I was.
I never heard Sabbath on the radio. Then again, I was a little bit too young back then. Bear in mind, guys, that the first Sabbath record that I got as a new release was Never Say Die. So I came up in like 77, 78. Right. I'm a little bit older, a little bit younger than David. I was like 6 years old in 1970. But, the period we're talking about.
I don't remember listening to FM back then in the mid-70s. You probably remember it was all AM radio, Monty. All the hit, and it was all top 40 hits. Elton John, all that kind of stuff. And first FM station I remember here in LA was like K West and the old KMET. They weren't playing Sabbath, but maybe early on they were. Was FM station actually playing a lot of Black Sabbath back then, Bill or David?
I don't remember. We didn't hear a lot, to be honest. I think it was just like the standard promotion where you get a little bit of airplay. When they advertise the gig. That's all I know. It just seemed like everybody knew Black Sabbath, and we spent years and years and years on the road. We played everywhere. We went through every town and in every county, as far as I know, except Alaska. You know, we even played Hawaii. I mean, we played everywhere in America. I think one of the things was the morbidity of the American press, or the morbidity of the American people. It kind of helped us in a way, because a lot of people thought we were like that, you know, a bit dark and a bit, you know, they weren't sure what to expect. So I think that had some initial impact on mothers and fathers, and I think that the kids, you know, were wanting to see us more. Absolutely. Because Mum and Dad were absolutely terrified of us. You know, it turns out that, you know, it wasn't like that. And the kids just loved listening to, you know, loud rock and roll, you know, that was rough around the edges, very raw bands. I was a very raw band.
Playing down in the south of U.S., like the Bible Belt back then, how was the reaction there? I mean, I'm sure you must have had a lot of protests.
Yes, there were.
Do you remember any of those, or do you have any great stories about touring?
In some of the places that we played at, we had to be... we were confined to the dressing room. You know, there was a police cordon outside the dressing room, and we were only allowed to come out when it was time to go on stage and time to go back into the dressing room. We weren't allowed to come out or mix or socialise in any way. They wanted to tame the beast, you know. The police wanted to make sure that... But that there were incidents like that in the South. We had situations where, on several occasions, the mayor of certain towns would would literally be on the freeway waiting for us to come in, and they would stop us from entering into the town because they thought we were Vikings, you know. They thought we were there to rape and pillage and, you know, destroy and, you know, and so on and so forth. You know, that whole thing had amplified so much, you know, and I think once people realised that we just wanted to come and play rock and roll, you know, and play our asses off, you know, that we really thought the world of our fans, you know. I think there was a lot of stuff that our fans loved. There was a lot of sincerity in Sabbath's music, and a lot of, at least for us, we were playing honestly, and I think that was felt at a real bosom level in each person, you know, and it was like, oh yeah, you know, because I've heard so many times where people will talk about Black Sabbath and say how much it helped them to get through certain periods of their life and so on and so forth, you know, which is a fantastic gift to receive from another human being. But we run into all kinds of problems, especially, you know, Alabama, Georgia for a while. Atlanta wasn't too bad, but Georgia, Mississippi, you know.
Right.
South Texas was a little bit rough all the way through, across over to Padre Island.
Were you ever actually arrested? Did it ever get to that point?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah. we were locked down and confined.
From what I heard, they had signs in front of the jails in Alabama that said, "Welcome Black Sabbath."
Oh, I love America. That's why I live here.
Me too.
I love it. I just love America, you know. I know there were so many people and didn't like a lot of the things that we were sharing or saying in our interviews. We weren't trying to directly push our, you know, stub the nose, or we weren't, as far as I know, I was never consciously aware that I was trying to rub something the wrong way. You know, I just wanted to play the next song, really.
Nowadays, as you know, bands, at least the big mega bands like a Black Sabbath, would put out a record maybe once every 3 years. Here, you guys were putting out, within a 2-year period, you put out the first, 2-3 records. I mean, 1970 had, you know, the debut in Paranoid, Masters of Reality, and then, you know, Volume 4 followed shortly after. And during that whole time, you're on the road, so it must have been a whirlwind. I mean, you didn't really have a chance to, like, kick back and take a deep breath and absorb everything.
Yeah.
Was it just insane back then, or how is that kind of how it was?
It was just a lot of work. We would get into the plane after the gig, and then we'd all fall asleep. We were just like babies. Everything caught up with us, you know. We really didn't stop until we started Volume 4. It was almost like, the pace slowed down just a little bit, you know, just enough for us to catch our breath and start on a new album. But, you know, from 68 all the way through until probably 1972, 1973, you know, we'd done nothing but work for 4 solid years. There was no time off, you know. We might have got Christmas Day, but we all we did was play and play and play and play. But we loved to play too. That was our passion. So I've always regarded Black Sabbath as a phenomenon rather than a band. The energy that came from it was just horrendous. absolutely horrendous. You know, you got 21, 22, 23-year-old guys with so much energy. So in that sense, it was a real force of nature more than of human beings, I think.
Now, was it the label that was pushing you, Warner Brothers, to get back in the studio, or was it something you guys wanted to do just to keep the momentum going?
Oh, no, it would have been us. You know, we would have pretty much called the shots. One of the things that we didn't do was collaborate with the record company. Our managers would say, hey, listen, you know, da-da-da-da-da, and Warner might want this, or Foods might want that, you know, but there was so many opportunities for us at that time. We freely wanted to develop more and do more things and to continue to tour.
Was there ever, you know, just coming from the record business, this is something that interests me, during the making of all these records, there was never like an A&R guy around or the record label coming down to the studio? You were just completely left to your own devices the entire time?
Yes.
Wow.
I had heard from someone that worked at Warner Brothers is that all the people at Warner Brothers literally feared Black Sabbath. They would refuse to meet the band. And this guy I had known finally met with Geezer, and they became, you know, real close. And he's like, Black Sabbath are the greatest, friendliest guys. But he said that the reputation Black Sabbath had were like, you were just these evil, monstrous, demonic people. And this is at your own label.
It's true. No, you know what? We got on real well with Goldsmith and a lot of the Warner Brothers staff. Whenever we were in Los Angeles, we always paid a visit to see Joe and just hang out, you know. And Joe was always very courteous and you know, very outgoing. So I think our relationship with Warner Brothers was friendly and very healthy.
Well, David and Monty, was there anything you wanted to add before we get into like the Volume 4 Sabbath Bloody Sabbath era?
We kind of skipped over Master Reality, but it really, you know, to me, those first three records, it's really like one record. It's like one period. You know, the first three records you can kind of lump together in that way. It really wasn't until Volume 4 that started being experimentation and sound. And, you know, to this day, even though I adore the first three records, there's something about Volume 4 that just is the record I'll always go want to play. There's just like some element. It's just got something to it that the first three don't have that keeps dragging me back.
Yeah.
So I think really transitioning from Master Reality into Volume 4 was a huge step for the band creatively, and also, Bill, it was the first record you guys had done outside of the UK.
Correct.
In Los Angeles, probably brought you a little bit closer to the label at that point as well.
Yeah. With Volume 4, can I say one thing about Masters?
Yes.
Masters of Reality.
Please.
It's my all-time favorite album. It's the one that kind of is the cherry on the top of the cake of the first three albums. I think it's really masterful, and I can see how our playing was in 1969 when we were first starting to put our songs together for Black Sabbath. How much the band had improved in its individual playing abilities, and also the songs were just so I don't know, they were just like so experienced. They were so well crafted, and it happens to be my Children of the Grave, of course, being the highlight of the album. You know, I mean, it's just I can't stop playing that. I love Black Sabbath because it has our anthem in there, you know, which is Black Sabbath, of course. I like Paranoid because I have so many good memories of making that album. But Masters of Reality is the real crowning glory for me. After that period, it took on a whole new, which seemed like we almost took a completely different course, a completely different change. So.
Bill, have you heard those CDs that Sanctuary Unleashed, like the rough mixes of stuff from those sessions? Did you get copies of that stuff?
I heard them in last August.
There was a song that was part of that you guys had never recorded. I don't even know the name of it or if it has a name, but I know that David and I have heard it, and it was like the one Sabbath track original for back then that never got recorded. Do you remember this track?
No, I don't know what it is. I don't know. I didn't take too much notice of the stuff that came in with the you know, the outtakes and things like that. I listened to it briefly, but I don't recall a whole lot right now.
It says early U.S. version. I don't know if these were the songs, but there were songs like The Haunting, Step Up, Death Mask. That said, are you aware of this, David, on an early U.S. version of Volume 4?
Yeah, from what I understand is that because of the difference in the situation in publishing between England and America, was that in America the publishing company decided to give like these subtitles to certain sections of the songs so that the band would receive extra publishing money for this. Have I got that right, Bill?
Yeah, I think that might sound like, I think you nailed it. I think that might be what that is.
They did these on every record.
Luke's Wall.
Yeah.
Luke's Wall, The Straightener.
A Bit of Finger, Every Day Comes and Goes. Yeah.
Well, the one thing that was different on the first album, the British version had Evil Woman, and the U.S. version had Wicked World.
Yeah, much better choice.
Right.
Evil Woman was the only other time that Sabbath had recorded a cover song that had made it onto a record.
Yeah, I didn't like what we did on that song. That was kind of, I think that would be a doing something that you don't want to do in order to try and get your name out. 20 years old and 22 years old, trying to get your name out.
The other song, though, Wicked World, to me is the song on the first Sabbath record that sounds most like the old club days, like Warning. Like it's got a little blues and jazz in it. Yeah, it sounds like a very old song, like older than most of the other tracks on the record. It
was the first song we wrote, and we originally wrote it in Tony's living room, and Tony had that really cool riff, but that would be the closest to what we were before Wicked World. But Wicked World is a very, very good jumping off record. That's a very good example of our starting point. And it was indeed our first song.
Now, after you guys had written the song Black Sabbath, and you had, and it had kind of shown the future direction of the band, what was actually the next track to come out of you guys after Sabbath?
God.
Would it have been NIB, maybe?
I'm not sure, Monty. I honestly don't know. I'm sorry.
Right. Yeah. Oh, no problem.
We should do.
I'm surprised how much you do remember from back in those days, Bill. It's amazing.
Some things are very clear, and then there's other stuff which I'll just bump into and just go, oh my God, and I have no memory at all. So far I've been batting pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely.
But thank you.
Yeah, I got to say, I'm impressed as well. You seem to have very vivid memories about all this stuff, like really, really surprising. One last question, guys. Bill, you made your singing debut on Master Reality, right? On Solitude, was that you?
No, that's us. We put him through some special stuff. That's another thing about Masters. We were starting to use some of the effects. We were getting a little bit bolder, a little bit stepping out just a little bit more. It's like, oh, what's this and what does this do? We were very interested in how things work in the studio by the time we did Masters of Reality. So,
and that was the first record that the band had self-produced, correct?
Well, we had a pretty good say right from the very beginning. But we wanted to know more about things. We put that organ. I hope it can be heard. We put in a real organ, a little church organ, and we put that in this. I'm not sure which sections. It was the bam 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 in Children of the Grave.
Yeah.
So there's all that going on. So we were starting to add other things. A little keyboard here and there, and yeah. Things are turning around. When
you guys wrote Changes and decided to put that on the record, were you worried about what your fans would think about a song like that? Was there any trepidation, like, God, have we gone too far? What are our fans going to think?
I don't think we had any fear of what anybody might think. That's one of the things. I don't know whether it's arrogance or whether it's fearlessness, or I'm not sure what that is. But if we liked it and we really thought that it was strong and powerful for us, then we'd just put it on the record, I think that's probably why maybe some of the record companies might get worried sometimes as well. There might have been some fear there. It's like, if they just do whatever they want to do. And but we needed to have that freedom. We needed to play what we wanted to do, So Changes was, just another, very much a part of us. It's very true to ourselves. Even today, we go right across the board with so many different things. Some of Tony Iommi's classical guitar work is just fucking superb. Absolutely. Also, his piano playing, which I don't think anybody's heard at a public level. His piano playing, his classical piano playing is excellent. Everybody is so versatile and can move. The one thing that connects us all is we like it dark. That's been always the constant groove. All of us love to go to flat fifths, and we just love when it goes dark.
Black Sabbath is so misunderstood because you were a very experimental band, and people always compare, bands like Zeppelin that did Zeppelin 3 or even Deep Purple or whatever, but people always consider Sabbath with the staple sound, which is from the first 3 records. Everyone has that, it sounds like Black Sabbath, that real doomy sound. But you experimented quite a bit. I mean, especially from Volume 4 on, like you say, with songs like Changes, and particularly with Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. I mean, some of the songs, which we'll get into later, that and Sabotage. I mean, you were really doing all sorts of different styles of music. What did it kind of bug you that people always associated the Sabbath sound to like the first 3 records? You know what I mean?
I think a lot of people traveled with us through. Maybe some we lost some people after the first 3 records. Maybe we did, but I think the majority of people followed us through. Then the only reason why I can validate that is because our audience never diminished right through to our final record, our last days, if you like, as the original band. We were still filling up all the houses anywhere in the world. I'll just use that as the example and validate the fact that people traveled with us through all those albums. I mean, I know we may be jumping around a little bit here right now, but most of the guys, as you know, Monty, I know quite a number of guys in today's hardcore metal, and the first things they say to me, man, that a lot of their influence was come out of Heaven and Hell, which I know we're not there right now, but and the latter Sabbath albums, they like. Never Say Die, or, Technical Ecstasy, which surprises me. I'm kind of like, but that was their time when they were young kids. That was what they listened to, so, And,
there's definitely a whole generation of kids these days that, to them, Black Sabbath started with Heaven and Hell. You know what I mean? That was like the era of Sabbath they knew. Absolutely.
Yes, so, anyway, Volume 4.
Yeah.
Anybody?
Can I just ask Bill, before we get to Volume 4, if you've ever heard Pantera's version of Solitude?
Yeah. Was it Solitude?
No,
it's Planet Caravan, David, right?
And they also did Hole in the Sky.
What was it? What was the track?
Planet Caravan from Paranoid?
Yes, yeah.
Caravan, that's what I mean. Planet Caravan, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I heard it some years ago, and I loved it, but I haven't listened to it a whole lot since. In fact, all of the versions, all of the bands that have covered our music, even No Doubt with Iron Man, I think No Doubt did Iron Man. I think Gwen did that. I think she did. But all of that, they are so complementary. The way that they play, how and interpret the songs, and it's just so complementary.
It was really Sabbath cover mania in the 90s when, if you remember, Columbia had put out 2 records, Nativity in Black 1 and Nativity in Black 2.
Right.
Sure.
Those were amazing records. To me, those are the pinnacle of bands covering Sabbath. Yeah. Bill, while we're in the same era here, you remember the record Live at Last, which I believe was recorded on the... All right, I was just curious, David, maybe you know this, but I know there's like a song on that record that you launch into that I've never heard before, and I don't know what it is to this day. In one of the long medleys, I think in the Wicked World medley on side 2.
The Sometimes I'm Happy, Sometimes I'm Sad thing?
Yeah, what is that?
Is that on Past Lives as well? Because I know Past Lives is basically Live at Last remastered.
Yes, it would be on Past Lives.
I have to be honest, I've never listened to it.
Yeah, it's like a 2.5-minute piece of music that sounds like it's a cover song or something, but I would never be able to figure out what it is.
Yeah, I don't recall ever listening to Live at Last. I kind of discounted it because, I felt like it was a little bit of a rip-off,
Yeah.
If I'm thinking of the right album, I thought, why are we doing this, I'm not exactly sure what that is. I know it came out, but I don't know where my head was at the time, but I don't believe I've ever listened to it.
Bill, I've always kind of wondered why Sabbath didn't, at the time, ever put out an official live record, because Live at Last was really kind of an almost import/bootleg, if I'm not mistaken. But, of course, in the 70s, you remember the big influx of live albums from, Deep Purple Made in Japan, Humble Pie Performance, even Frampton Comes Alive and Kiss Alive, of course. Those were the records that essentially really broke the artist into megastardom. Was there a reason Black Sabbath never did put out a live album during that time?
Beats the crap out of me. One would think, I guess for me, with all of our recordings, I think our recordings have been very good, but when I compare them to our live sound, and when we go on stage and we have a real good night, it's just like, God, it's so different from the actual recordings themselves. So it's always been a little bit, I've always had a production sore spot, I guess just like other musicians too, where a bass drum didn't quite sound right, or, it was the best that we could do in the recording studio, but live, it's a whole different thing. I have in my private collection, and only because I have to have it in the sense of, I have of the last major tour that the original band did about 4 years ago now, I think, or 3 years ago at least. I have to keep the show of each night, and I have them locked away in a fireproof safe in a very safe place, but I utilize these discs to find out, really, if we ever tour again, I utilize these discs to measure the energy, to measure where I was at, where I was playing, and so they're basically my own informational discs that I use as a drummer to make sure that, everything's on my end is going as it's supposed to. And the reason why I'm saying this is because I have live albums that sound so fucking good. Probably the most outstanding one that I have right now is when we played in Prague about three and a half years ago, I guess. And it's just outstanding. I'm just blown away by what we did. So I don't know why we haven't done a live album. Up until when we did the reunion album,
Are any of these recordings you're going to possibly release in the near future?
I think I have to keep them for private use. It's something where I use them to look at each track and find out, if things are speeding up, or just to measure accuracy and so on and so forth. They're my own private working discs. So I would never dream of, having these, or suggesting to the other guys to release these. These are our own private, work associated discs.
Gotcha.
So yeah.
Okay, though, because the three of us are planning to show up at your house later this afternoon, so you can play all these to us, Bill.
That's all right. I'll put the kettle on.
If I remember rightly, from a circus magazine in the mid-'70s, I thought the Live at Last tapes, they were obviously recorded about 72 or 73. You can tell that from the stereo on them. It was for a live album. It was going to be called Fire on the Mountain. Does that sound familiar, Bill?
No. No, I don't recall it. You guys are sharp, man.
I always collected videos back then. I know now a lot of them obviously have been reissued on DVD, but I was astounded how many live videos you had, but never recorded the live album, like the Live in France from 1970, the Never Say Die tour, and so many others. And, even stuff you did like on Don Kirshner's Rock concert. I mean, there were some amazing, amazing performances.
Thank you. Yeah, I like the Don Kirshner show. Very cool. Very cool.
So, was there anything else you want to touch on Volume 4 before we move on?
I think one of the things which it was an important turning point for me with Volume 4 was for the first time I was really, 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 really feeling the effects of my drug use. So I think that sure, I got high and everything just like everybody else. But on Volume 4, I was going into deep water. In the studio, there was almost like a lot of wanting high tonal qualities, because that speed, man, it makes you want to, wants to tighten everything up and, get everything just clean and tight. And I can feel that when I play Volume 4, I can hear where I tweak my drums a little more than I would have normally done, I think the songs are outstanding. I just love, it's part of where we were. I think it's an honest album. I just think there's some really nice ideas on there, and nice tags. Snowblind, of course, and help me out, guys.
Wheels of Confusion.
Tomorrow's
I love Wheels of Confusion.
Yeah. Vitus Dance, Under the Sun. Yeah.
Would you like to hear the Under the Sun story?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we're trying to get Under the Sun sorted out, and for some reason I couldn't lock up with the guys. It was the first time ever I couldn't lock in. And I know why I couldn't lock in. It was because I was way, way, way too high on cocaine. But the session ended up where we ended up in a London studio for some reason, and we were trying to lock it in. It's like, let's get Under the Sun, for God's sake. And Tony had some, kind of strange twists and turns guitar-wise, and I just wasn't locking. And I sat on the studio floor with another extremely famous lead guitar player. I better not mention who it is. And we just sat on the floor in the studio and did piles and piles and piles of cocaine. and while I'm trying to figure out what to play on Under the Sun, and it was just a nightmare track for me. But that's because the nightmare was starting for me as far as my definitely with my hardcore drug use. That was the first time that I was basically sent home. It's like, God, but I didn't have a home to go to at the time. And even though we were in London, and that particular time I ended up going down to Geezer's house and just laying on the lawn outside with my wife, not knowing where to go or do or anything, you know. But I kind of shook it out at Geezer's, and then once I got cleaned up, I was able to nail Under the Sun in literally, you know, like within an hour or something. But yeah, I really fucked up on that one. That's my worst memory of that album.
I wasn't aware that the sessions for that record had actually moved to London. So was that the only song done in London, was Under the Sun?
Yeah, I think it was. You know, we were still trying to get the track. It was a great song, you know. The irony of it is that I love Under the Sun today. We've actually jammed it a few times in the last 5 years. And Tony just does it to tease me, you know. He'll start playing it, and he just does it to fuck with me. And, you know, we're mean. But he knows how much that cut, you know, it's just like, oh, God. But I just jam in with it now, and I just jam in like it was just yesterday that we recorded it, and it sounds really, really good. It sounds really, really good. We've never performed it, but we do jam into that.
So the song Snowblind, the lyrics pretty much lyrically captures the essence of the recording process, huh? Were you guys, was everyone doing cocaine at the time? Was it just...
Well, yeah, it's difficult for me to say that everyone was doing it, but there was quite a bit of substance abuse going on.
Right.
You know, it was also a time when we had literally taken the bull by the horns, and what I mean by that is in the sense of production. We had Spock Wall, who was our live sound engineer.
Right.
Spock was on the sessions, and our manager at the time, Patrick Meehan, had showed up as well, and he was trying to, you know, get things sorted out in the studio. So we were all in there trying to, you know, figure this thing out and how was it going to shape, you know, where we were going to go with it.
I was just going to ask, when did Don Arden come into the picture?
I'm not sure. Don came in, I think, in the late 70s. It was something that I think that he may have always wanted to do. As much as I was courteous to Don, I actually didn't want to be managed by Don Arden. So Black Sabbath was never managed by Don Arden. Yeah.
I was going to say that there's a reason on Volume 4 that there's a dedication to the great cola company of Los Angeles.
Yeah, I think that was Osborne's idea. that was either Osborne's idea or Butler's idea. Yeah.
That's great.
So, you know, kind of says it out loud right there, but we were kind of off the tracks on that album. It surprises me how great that album really is. I love Wheels of Confusion, 2 bass drums, you know, moving along. The 2 bass drum thing, finessing 2 bass drums, started in Masters of Reality and continued on, and that's where Geezer and I were now pushing on 16th notes and even up to 32 notes, where we were actually, you know, starting to really open that up, and especially on Wheels of Confusion, there were parts where we just were laying in something where we'd never gone before. It was brand new, you know. And I still to this day, I love the feel that we had on there. And Butler and myself, we just, I could call him Geezer, I guess. But Geezer and myself, I really like what we did as a rhythm section. We were definitely tightening up even more.
Hey Bill, I was wondering what during this time, how was the band during like social settings? Did you guys go out and like to public events? Because I mean, Black Sabbath were never the rock star kind of band as, you know, the Stones were the celebrity type, or the Zeppelin or whatever. But did you go out to like the Rainbow or to the different bars or any kind of social events? And how were you perceived as to the public back then?
Yeah, we would go out occasionally, but mostly during Volume 4, most of our time was spent behind closed doors, you know, with the windows, with the drapes drawn, and, you know, just quietly going in and out of each other's rooms and that kind of a deal, you know, I'm coming over now, okay?
So it really was dark. I mean, the music kind of set the setting of how you guys were living life, huh?
Yeah, we'd started to, kind of, or we were all together, almost in this, almost in a climate of, I don't know.
Isolation?
Not only isolation, but also in like free spirit, or, all the clothes were off at that point. Nobody wore clothes. We would go from room to room, and everything, all of us were very out. The whole thing was very out, and, and including our wives as well, so it was almost like the 1967 hippie commune. And I hope I'm not, when I say that, I'm not being rude to the hippies, but it almost felt like that we come to this kind of weird place where we felt like we all needed to take our clothes off and walk about, and everybody, it was like that, just that kind of atmosphere. But socializing a little bit, but not too much. I know for myself, I didn't like to go out too far, and if we did go to the Rainbow, I was usually pretty fucked up, so I'd like to come back. We stayed very tight on Sunset Boulevard. I think we were living at the time in Sunset Marquee.
What was your association with other bands of that era, say like Deep Purple, Zeppelin? Was it close knit? Did you guys hang out a lot together, or because Sabbath always was seemed kind of on their own in a way? At least that was my perception. We
didn't really socialize with Deep Purple. We knew Bonzo. We knew the guys from Zeppelin, But when we were doing Volume 4, it's almost like we were kind of on a desert island, I think. I don't recall us having a whole lot of interaction with a lot of our musician friends. But we knew many, 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 many bands at the time. And of course we did socialize with them. We got high with them. We were just, we got pretty crazy, to be honest. But so we did have a lot of association with other artists. However, during Volume 4, I don't remember that, I even feel, as I'm talking about it right now, I even feel somewhat isolated from it, in that period. I know that things became very different with the next record, and I know, things really turned around again. And I think it was because we had to go through Volume 4. We had to do whatever Volume 4 was, and we all had to go through the trip. We had to do the trip, if you like.
Did you feel that helped with the creative process, though?
I wouldn't think so. I wouldn't think so, not with Sabbath, because we could all fall out of bed right now and get together and bang something together and just like play its ass off, and wherever we are right now. I think our creative process was strong enough to actually come through the amount of stuff that was being done from a drug point of view that actually would diminish us. Having been in recovery now for years and years and years and years, in hindsight, I can look back at what the cocaine actually does, and it actually diminishes a person rather than strengthens a person.
Sure.
We actually did really well to actually get that album out.
Well, you mentioned how it changed on the next album. Let's get into the next album, Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. Was there anything else, David or Monty, you wanted to mention before we get into it, or?
Yeah, okay. I'm looking forward to discussing Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, because it's my personal favorite.
Yeah, it's one of mine as well. Well, we got Tony had the killer riff as usual, and we did this in a castle. We did most of the rehearsals in a castle in Wales.
I heard it was haunted.
Yeah, well, he was haunted by Tony Iommi. But you know what? It was haunted, and Geezers and myself were extremely perceptive to ghosts and things like that. And Geezer, before we'd been there a day, he'd already spotted a couple of ghosts. So he's very in tune with things like that. That's always been something we've all had since we were all together, since we knew each other. We've always been fascinated by things that are a little bit different, or when Tony struck up, the atmosphere was there was no dope, there was no hardcore drugs, we were just doing our usual thing, which was we always smoked it, but it was nothing like the Los Angeles, the tightness of Los Angeles. We were back in the countryside and in England when Tony just started up with the start of the Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. Terry and I just laid in. It was just intuitive playing, and it was fucking huge. It was absolutely enormous. And to me, it was like, oh my God, it sounds so fucking good. For me, that was a thoroughly enjoyable album to be a part of. It was also a time for me when I was actually traveling over to Belgium to visit my wife, and that's when she became pregnant, and we had our first child while I was making Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. So it was a fruitful year, you know. What I like, you know, I mean, just in Sabbath Bloody Sabbath alone, I just loved the way Tony would put in those superb jazz chords. So we're in the middle of Bedlam, and then he would just move it and push it over, you know, and we'd all trail and just like, oh man, you know, it just sounded so good.
These are the chords that he's playing under the part where he goes, nobody will let you know. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And I think one of the things that I might want to mention right now is that when we were brought up as musicians, all of us, we had to learn to play dynamically because there were no microphones, and so to enhance music, we had to learn how to, you know, be able to go low or quiet, build music up, and so on and so forth. So we had to learn as kids to play dynamically, and you have a perfect example of dynamics at work when you listen to Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, and it goes into the softer melody there, and into a very nice jazz part. And again, I'm really proud of our band that we can literally play balls out and then drop out. The dynamics, I think, are so important, and I think Sabbath is a good example of a band playing dynamically.
If I may sing Bill's praises here, one of the things that I always thought separated Sabbath from all the other hard rock metal bands out there was the fact that Sabbath swung. And Sabbath swung because of, I believe, your playing, Bill. And I think on this album you get a song like A National Acrobat, where that riff in the hands of a lot of other bands could be so wooden, but it just grooves so much because you're playing just slightly behind the beat there, and it just swings like crazy.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Monty. All right.
That's one of the best songs on that record, National Acrobat. That's probably my favorite song on that record, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bill, a question about the title track. At the time it was written, was Ozzy worried about singing it that high, knowing that it would be very difficult to do that song live later on?
I don't know. You know, I really wasn't aware of that. You know, he'll come in, and again, taking it from the original roots of who we are. So he'll come in and he'll hit it where he thinks it has to go. He's fucking brilliant like that. You know, and he's spot on. He had to go there.
Right.
At that time, it's about the song. So what happens after that is therein lies another problem possibly. But at the time,
you just want to do the best you can. Yeah.
Yes.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Like, who cares about the live show? We'll worry about that later. Let's just make the greatest song we can make right now. Right?
Yes, exactly. So it's that kind of mentality, and otherwise there's too much to think about. You know, it was typically coming from how we jam, because we would always connect up, and it's just like, oh, okay, you know, we would just crash into each other. So that's another good example of crashing in, as far as I'm concerned. I think what I wanted to mention about the other song before, if I may, National Acrobat, it was so important to leave that wide open, because I think you'll see that the drums and bass leave so much room to be able to swing and to keep it all open. There's no temptation to fill anything up or to show oneself, you know, as a drummer, or to put a drumming performance in there. Everything is about supporting each other, and I think that you know, National Acrobat does that. I think it's a really cool song too.
Absolutely.
It actually brings to mind an interesting question, and I bet you this is a question, Bill, that you haven't been asked a lot. But I'm just looking at the sequence of the record. Obviously, it starts out with the title track, and then National Acrobat, which is something a song you felt really strong about at the time, which is why it's second. But the question is, who would sequence the Sabbath records back in the day? Was it Tony? Was it the producer? Was it you guys collectively? Like, who actually came up with the running order for all these records?
No, the band did.
Right.
The band did. Yeah, we'd all throw our 10 cents worth in, and you know, we'd usually get together with Terry, and you know, and Ozzy would want it that way, and you know, we all did that. Yeah, good
and of
question.
course, it was much easier to sequence records back then than it is now, because you had side 1 and side 2, so obviously you wanted something ass-kicking and up-tempo to lead off each side. You only had like 8 to 10 songs to worry about back then. I know now when I'm trying to sequence CDs for a band, it's almost impossible when you're looking at 14 songs. Once you get past the first 3 or 4, the rest don't even matter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's so much, that art of like sequencing a record, I think, has so been lost in the CD era, where you got to think of one continuous 70-minute piece. What order you put it in.
Right.
Definitely, something that's hurt, I think.
Point. Yeah.
Well, Bill, you mentioned the change from Volume 4 to Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. It seems like it was almost a different band. Obviously, Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, apart from the title track, is a lot, I guess, lighthearted. It's not as dark and doomy as your previous records. It seems, dare I say, like happier. Was it just more the mood that you guys were all in? You felt a little bit more comfortable, to experiment in different avenues. How did that process from Volume 4 to Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, particularly the writing process, how did that evolve so quickly?
We were all together again in the castle. We were on top of each other. We were just having a blast. It was almost like we were on our holidays. Literally, we were having so much fun and screwing with each other and joking, and we're very well suited when we're in the English countryside. All of us love to walk. We're all extremely active like that, and we all walk for miles as well. It's amazing. The whole atmosphere was different. Tony would have the monster licks. We just literally did what we usually do, which is we all stand by. I'd look at Terry. We'd try to work out a good orchestrational setting for Tony's chords, and we would all jump into the mix on how, if we didn't like something, or let's change that, or let's rearrange that. We were all inside all that kind of stuff. It wasn't just one person or two people. We always looked around to see what would work and what wouldn't work. Some of the things that we did do, we would run a track. So in other words, if we had a piece that we really liked, sometimes we would play the shit out of it to tighten it up, to make it a bit better or whatever it might be. And that's something that we did in Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, where we would literally play at full volume, murderous volume, and make it and run it. So it's like, okay, can this hold up? Because it's one thing making something and then going, okay, well, we'll record that. It's another thing rehearsing it over and say, can this stand? And we would do that. We would test it by running it, and running it more than once as well. Literally running it a number of times to make sure that it was stand-up, that it would hold, and especially would it hold live.
But as I say, the arrangements too on it, particularly on songs like Killing Yourself to Live and even Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, it's like 10 different riffs built into one song.
Yeah.
How did you guys arrange songs like that? Was that the whole band together, or would Tony come up with these riffs, and rather than putting them in different songs, you said, let's add it to this song?
Tony would have a whole bunch of licks all the time. But sometimes Tony would have really good licks, but he didn't always know that he had a good lick. I'm trying to say it in the most gentlest way. Sometimes we had to tell him that was a great lick. Sometimes he would definitely know it was a great lick. But there's other times when he would have something and it's like, oh, what are you going to do with this? It's like, it sounds fucking great, And he said, well, I don't know, and we would literally have to help each other along sometimes. And Killing Yourself to Live, it's jogging my memory right now, was actually a little bit difficult to write because we had the lyric, we had Killing Yourself to Live, and we had the melody, and we had the lyric. And it was like, oh, fuck, man. And it was so powerful, to have that. And so it's like, how do you support the lyric? How do you support that melody? So I know that there were some things where we had to stop and start and try new things. There were times when Tony would be alone by himself and he would work out pieces. But there were times when all of us were alone by ourselves as well and trying to find out what might work, what might not work, And literally, it was just a matter of push and pull, or Geezer would come up with something that was, brilliant or what have you. Again, we would pretty much work it out in a team format, but there was alone time for each individual. And Tony, of course, being the one that would have to, not necessarily have to, but would come up with the all of the changes or all of the different types of ideas, sometimes you come up with a menu of ideas, and we would kind of go, yeah, that and that and that and that, you know. And so we'd have to throw a lot to each other, throw the ball back kind of deal, you know.
Were you contributing anything lyrically to the material, Bill?
Yeah, if I had ideas or if I had a title or a line or anything like that, I'd try to throw it in there. Sometimes it got thrown out. That's okay. I just threw it in there. What would work for a lyric, like anything that might work. I was always trying to be helpful with Terry to see if he might need anything, or it's like, how you doing with the lyrics, or or Ozzy too. Ozzy would always throw in ideas and lyrical things, change things around, So yeah, that was always going on all the time. And sometimes, I would come in with ideas with arrangements, or let's go there, or let's not do that. But we were all like that as well. We were all very iffy about our arrangements, so we would all have input. So the band was quite active in all areas.
Well, should we move on to my personal favorite record, and probably my favorite record of all time, Sabotage? Was there anything else you guys wanted to mention before we get into Sabotage? Or
I would like to bring up a couple of points as far as Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. One is, what was it like deciding to do the orchestration on Spiral Architect?
I think it was just a really good idea. I'm not sure who came up with that. I'm not sure if that was me. I know that's one of my titles. It just seemed to work. It was like we'd already done a little bit on Volume 4, Snowblind. We'd done that little orchestra thing, and
that's real orchestration on Snowblind.
Yeah, a 4-piece LA string section came in, and on that one I kind of played quite a big role on that one as far as some of the notations and pulling that together. But I'm not sure. That might have been me. I don't know. I honestly can't remember. But it certainly worked. I mean, I think it just sounds great. It just enhances the song so well. And Tony obviously has all the notes. Da-da-dum, 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 da. Very orchestrational. I think Geezer and myself played. I really like what we played. We left it open, the nice big boom, boom. We did all that. So
that song is so huge, and absolutely the perfect way to end that album. That song with the orchestration in it.
Yes,
it's an amazing song.
Thank you.
The other thing I wanted to ask, or just mention at least, is the artwork on this album. Artwork at the time, I mean, when it first came out and you were looking at this on a 12 by 12 album cover, the artwork was absolutely stunning on it.
Thank you. Yeah.
Did you get a lot of crap from it? Was the label resistant to put it out? I'm just curious, because that was probably, at that point, I don't remember an album cover that was, that offensive, so to speak.
Yeah, I see that as our first metal artwork. I liked what we did on Black Sabbath, and I liked what we did on Masters. I really liked that a lot. Just the black with the purple. And we really couldn't think of an album cover for Volume 4, so we put ours up there, It seemed like the natural thing to do. But
that's an iconic cover, too, Volume 4. Totally iconic, that image.
Yes, it is, yeah. It's good. I mean, it works. It does work. It's great. This album cover you're talking about is my favorite album cover, my favorite Black Sabbath album cover of all. I like the front of it. I thought it was fucking brilliant. And I love the back of it. I found so much peace looking at the back of it. And I hate the inside. And I wish we hadn't have done the inside like that. That came, and it was just like, okay, well, this is what we're going to do for the inside. And it's like one of those, okay, well, yeah, okay, great, whatever.
What was in the inside on the gatefold? I haven't had the album years, I forgot.
It was a woman in a coffin holding a cross. I think it was.
Oh, I think you're thinking that we sold our soul for rock and roll.
Yeah.
Oh, I am?
Yeah. In America, there wasn't a gatefold. It was just the front and the back. But the European version had a gatefold, and this is the one where you see the bedroom with the 4-poster bed with you guys naked from the waist up with your hands in front of your face.
Yeah. I didn't like that.
Photo.
Yeah, I didn't like that. It was, it's like, could have maybe done something different with that. I love the front and the back. I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah.
I don't recall anybody really having any distaste towards it. Maybe they did, but I don't recall it,
Record stores didn't object to it like the Kmart's. I mean, from that time, that was a pretty heavy artwork for that time.
Oh, yeah. I just wasn't aware of from the manufacturing point of view or the selling point of view. I wasn't aware of any of the of any of that going on. I'm sure that there may have been, but I'm just speculating.
If I may just throw in one personal thing here, and that is that 26 years ago, my wife and I walked down the aisle to the song "Fluff."
Really?
Great. That's great. That's great. Yeah. You know why it was called Fluff, don't you?
No.
We had a dear friend, Alan Freeman, disc jockey.
Oh, that's Fluff Freeman?
Yeah. And his name was Fluff. So we wrote it, and Tony wrote it, and Fluff heard it. Alan Freeman heard it, and he made it his own. He absolutely loved that record, and he used it to open his shows, and he's just a real nice guy as well. So
wow, I never.
So there's a connection there. Yeah.
Well, some more trivia. Isn't the song "Who Are You"? Wasn't that the first song Ozzy wrote entirely by himself?
Yes. Yeah.
I think I read that.
That's another brilliant song. Do you want to hear the story, or?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I'm living at Field Farm with my wife near Evesham in Worcester, and it's about fucking 7 o'clock in the morning, and we've just gone to bed, and he came screeching down the lane. I could hear him, coming in, and he's got the car, and he's just so noisy, He comes in, he pulls into the courtyard, and he comes into the house. Bill, it's like, oh fuck, it's trying to not notice that he's there, and he's so loud. Anyway, I think he had Spock with him, or he had somebody with him. And at Phil Farm, we had a little studio. We had a little rehearsal room. Then in another room, we had, we had all our things set up, what have you, tape machines and all the stuff of the day. And we're in the second floor in the farmhouse and trying to get some sleep. Then the next thing I heard was bam, 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 and he's singing not in any room. He's singing in the hallway of the house, which goes up 3 stories. So it's like a really good sound, And I heard this, and he started to sing to it, and I got out of bed, and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't fucking believe how good this song sounded. And I said, "Oh my God," stumbling about, underpants on, and what have you, and more information than you need. And he laid it down. He laid a rough down in there, and I could hear the bass drums and it was so tribal. It's like boom, and it's tambourines, and you could hear the whole movement of it, and it was just fucking brilliant. He had it from top to bottom, and he'd been working on it, and it's like, okay, so we had to record the song. I mean, it was just completely incredible. The only regret I've got with that song, and one day, I might re-record that, because the bass drum sound frustrated me again, in the sense that I really wanted to make sure it was like boom, crack, boom, crack, da 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 da, and it's got all that jazz. I mean, it's just got the da 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 da. Da, 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 da.
You are listening to the Shockwave Skull Sessions podcast. You're in the midst of the great Black Sabbath discussion with the one and only Bill Ward, the legendary drummer from Black Sabbath, Monte Conner, the head of A&R at Roadrunner Records, and David Tedds. For those of you not familiar with David Tedds, he's been in the music business for over 20 years. He's put together a lot of the great catalog releases, the remastered catalogs from bands like Grand Funk, Queensryche, Canned Heat, as he talked about earlier, and several other bands. The guy is a encyclopedia of hard rock and metal knowledge. We're going to get right back into the discussion. I do want to mention that unfortunately about 3 or 4 minutes got cut off when Bill started talking about the Sabotage record. So it gets right into the album cover artwork, some interesting stories there. So we're going to continue on and take this all the way to the end. We still got well over an hour left, so some great stuff here. Of course, this is the Shockwave Skull Sessions podcast, heard at RoadrunnerRecords.com. The discussion now continues with Bill Ward, Monte Conner, David Tedds, and myself.
So everybody just shows up fucking willy-nilly in the morning going, well, where are we supposed to stand? And we've got this whole mirror idea going on. You know, I can't really blame them. I took a look at myself, you know. I didn't even bring a proper pair of trousers with me. But that was the album cover. I thought the concepts of the album cover Graham Wright had put together, and Graham was, you know, he looked after my drums, and he looked after me for many years. But anyway, that's what that was, and it's just so befuddling. I mean, it's a great album, and we're sitting there with all this clothing on that just it has no association whatsoever with anything, you know. So I don't know. I can let you know that the red tights were my wife's. The checkered underpants that I'm wearing, if you look close enough at my ass, those were Ozzy's, and because Ozzy had to lend me them, he had to wear a long robe. And in that picture, of course, he doesn't have any underpants on. He's just got this long fucking robe that he's wearing. So, one of those disastrous mornings, which with a good concept, I thought the artwork had a good concept. But I just still laugh till I break up looking at Tony. Tony's shirt, man, it just fucking blows me away.
But of course, the music was in. With the music within, oh my God, definitely.
Unbelievable.
To me, like the most underrated of all the Sabbath records.
I agree.
Yeah, it's a good album. I think it's a really good album.
I mean, like the Rit and Megalomania, two of the longer tracks you guys had ever done.
Yeah, those were
Hole in the Wall, kicking things off, and sorry.
I was saying those were troubling times for us. You know, the Rit was. We were really going through a real bad time with our management. And, of course, just like most bands, unfortunately, in this business, as I'm sure all you guys are well aware of, we made the wrong choice. You know, we had a manager who was dishonest.
That is a dishonest manager. It's hard to believe.
Yeah, I know. And it seems like every band has to go through this fucking. It's like almost like a badge of honor these days. As a matter of fact, I think a lot of things are getting cleaned up now in today's management. Back then it was, man. So the Rit, I thought, again, Geezer and Ozzy, I thought, had written absolutely brilliantly on the Rit. And that song was like, you know, if you think in terms of Black Sabbath being an anthem, that same type of unison that brings us together with Sabbath, the Rit had a similar kind of core feeling to it. It was like, we got hurt and fuck you, and that's basically what the Rit is, especially with the incredible Tony licks on the front of it. Then the whole band comes in again, and you know, it's just great. And the way that Ozzy spits it out, and just the way that he just allows all those lyrics to come out, is just phenomenal to me. It's probably my favorite track on that album.
Oh, one of my favorite all-time songs. Yeah,
that track can scare the shit out of you the way it comes in too. With there's like a synthesizer or some kind of rolling noise, and the whole track kicks in. You jump out of your skin.
Yes.
Well, you could hear the spite in it, and particularly, I think that's Ozzy's best vocal performance ever on that entire album. Particularly in the Rit, I mean, you could really hear the anger and the spite from Ozzy and the whole band. I mean, it really comes off. And some of the lines on there, like, I despise the way I worship you. Absolutely brilliant line. You grow up worshiping, you know, your manager or your boss or your teacher or whatever it may be, but you despise the fact that I just thought that was just so many brilliant lines in that entire album. But I think the fact that you guys were going through so much turmoil really made that album just absolutely one of the heaviest albums ever recorded, and it just really clearly shows
thank you.
The emotion. Brilliant album.
Yeah, we were kicking back, and I don't mean in the sense of kicking back, as in American kicking back.
Right.
No, we were
literally kicking.
Yes, literally.
Yeah. Well, the diversity again on that, I mean, just unbelievable amount of diversity, and the way you arranged all the songs together, from just the bombastic heaviness to Hole in the Sky. You know, you mentioned about Tony's classical playing, which clearly shows in that little 45-second, you know, Don't Start Too Late instrumental. And then right into kicking it into Symptom of the Universe, which I think is one of your best drum performances just unbelievable. That album is just magical. I mean, every song on that album is just incredibly diverse, and I just could go on forever raving about this record. But what are you guys' thoughts on it, Monty and David?
As I said, I'm surprised that it's not really talked about kind of in the same breath as the first 5 records. For me, I'm more into it than Sabbath Bloody Sabbath just because it's a heavier record. But to me, it's definitely the most underrated record in the entire Sabbath catalog. It's absolutely on fire. Bill, it almost seems like on Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, maybe you guys had felt you'd mellow too much, so you wanted to come back with something super heavy. Like, was it a conscious effort to come back with something as heavy as that, or it just was a natural progression?
I don't recall it being a conscious decision. You know, I just remember the opening notes of Symptom of the Universe and the obvious place where we would have to go. That's how simple it is for me. I don't recall a lot of the things that surrounded it.
To me, when I first heard it, I thought that it was such a big step forward because I perceived that there was almost like this, what we now call prog rock kind of thing, whereas there was a lot of keyboards in it, and especially with Rit and Megalomania, that these songs were 8-9 minutes long each, and they were real epics. And I felt you'd sort of gone above and beyond what you'd done before in terms of arrangements. Was that something you were conscious of?
For myself, not really, not personally. I know that we were stepping out, you know, when Rick came into the picture, that was an important time because we've always enjoyed Rick, and we always, you know, we were always in and out of seeing Yes all the time, you know, on tours or wherever.
Oh, did Rick Wakeman, did he play on that album?
Yeah.
Oh, I was completely unaware of that. Wow. Mm-hmm. Did you know that, David? Monty?
No, I didn't.
I remember. I had forgotten it, but I do remember reading that once. Yes.
Yeah, I think he was. I might be mistaken. Is Rock and Roll Doctor on there?
Oh no, that's Technical Ecstasy.
Ah, okay. I know Rick played on that.
Yeah, and he plays on Sabracadabra off Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. But I was never aware he played on Sabotage.
Oh, you know what? I could be talking out my ass right now.
Tell me about the song Super Czar, how that came about with the choir. Did you actually bring in a choir into the studio?
Yeah, we brought in the whole lot. I'll tell you what, that's a great example. There you go. Super Czar, it's one of those things that Tony was working on in the corner, again, you know, in the Mono Valley. And I just heard this, ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum, ba-dum, bum, 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 and that was it. It didn't have any more. It didn't go anywhere. And I kept saying to him over and over again, I said, you know what, Tom? That sounds really fucking good, man. You know, that sounds like it could be a really big production or a big song. And he goes, really? You think so? You know, he's like, and he said, I don't know what to do with it. I don't know where to go with it. I said, I think we really ought to make that into a song. So finally something happened where we took it seriously, you know, and we started to look at what he had. And then, you know, the vision of hearing it with a choir or with drums, you know, the first things I heard with it were timpani, you know, so I played around on my tom-toms and kind of like, you know, put where the timpani would go, and it just grew from there. It was something that it came about. Tony found all the rest of it, whatever it was supposed to be, that was lying dormant somewhere in his head, and that's how that came about. And I definitely wanted to put I put vibraphone on there, I put timpani on there. I heard it as this enormous, kind of almost doom-laden kind of chanting, big ceremonial thing, and we all did. I mean, when Geezer put his bass down on it, it was like, oh fuck, here we go.
Well, you sure captured it, because that's exactly how it sounds.
Yeah, and it turned into Super Czar. And also, not only did that, but it also turned into our opening song before we went on stage. Right. And then we played Super Czar, and I did all the bells. I put the bells on there, and I just everything, man. It was. I think we started that one. I think we recorded part of that in England, but for some reason, I think we ended up in Belgium on that one, where I think I just finished putting the bells on. I can recall being sick. I got a real bad alcoholic overdose right after putting the bells on that. So, you know, everything was fine. Oz was with me, so we pulled through. That's what I can remember of that. I'm really searching hard on these tracks right now
A couple of the tracks I know you did live a lot, like I mentioned, Hole in the Sky and Symptom of the Universe, I think, was on Don Kirshner's, and you did the Decade of Black Sabbath. You played those songs. And I know nowadays, physically, those must be extremely difficult. For one, for Ozzy to sing in that register of Hole in the Sky, and for you to drum on Symptom of the Universe, it must be very... Is that why it's kind of dropped out of the sets? I know that your live sets, you don't do anything off the Sabotage record.
Yeah, collectively, we love Symptom of the Universe. For me, before I go anywhere near a stage, if I know I've got to go on stage 3 months in advance, I train down, or rather I train up. I have to be up to at least walking 10 to 12 miles every other day, and I walk in sand, I walk on cement, and I do multiple amounts of push-ups, and I train really heavily so that when I get to drum ready, what I call drum ready, I would have had to lose off, I usually have to drop about 20 pounds, then I'll drop the other 7 or 8 pounds while I'm on the tour. So it's a drastic weight drop, but I can still play. I can still play inside, what I have to do, Symptom of the Universe, whatever it might be. I can still play those, but I have to be what I call stage ready, and because it's easy to put the weight on now, So I literally have to train up every time we go out on tour. I'm very disciplined, and that's how I'm able to play those songs. Unfortunately, Symptom, we can't do any longer. Ozzy's voice has a tough time getting up there now. So, nevertheless, on all the songs, all of us remain really, really fit. It's more like the YMCA Keep Fit Club rather than a Black Sabbath rehearsal. So everybody really keeps themselves in good shape. We have to. If you're touring, you've got to be in good shape. So,
Bob, if I can point out that on the very last tour that Bill did with the band, for the encore, they started with the opening riff of Symptom of the Universe and took it all the way up to the vocal part and then went into Paranoid. Right, Bill?
Yeah, bit of a teaser. It's frustrating because we do love the song. It's always been a great stage song. And so, we want to play it. It's just something that's, it's like, oh, God, it comes out of frustration, not with Ozzy. It has nothing to do with Oz or Ozzy as a performer or anything else. It's just stuff that we like to do live. It's just we like to, just lay in and do the job, So we have those little things that come up every once in a while, and we throw them in on the stage and go, come on, let's do it, So
I was going to say, I can tell you, Bill, from a fan's point of view, that when I go and see Sabbath, even if you don't do a full song, but if you put sections of instrumental sections of certain songs in there, all the fans appreciate the shit out of that. I mean, it's very, very cool when you guys do something like that. So yeah. I would encourage you, should the opportunity arise again, to continue doing stuff like that.
Yeah, that's cool. I appreciate you saying that.
Well, should we move on to Technical Ecstasy?
Oh, I didn't know if we covered it. I didn't know if we covered it enough in Sabotage. I guess if you guys think we have, then...
Oh, we could talk. I could personally talk for 10 hours about that record, but I don't want to take up time.
Where do you stop?
What about you guys, Monty, David? Is there anything else about Sabotage?
No, I think we're covered.
All I can say is that I've got to absolutely echo what Monty says. It's the most underrated album in the whole Sabbath catalog.
And I third that. I do like the blow on the jug too. By the way, that you and Ozzy do.
Oh yeah. That's you singing that, right, Bill?
Yeah.
So that was technically your singing debut before, I guess you sang, It's All Right.
Yes, it was me and the Prince of Darkness having some fun.
I love that. I remember as a kid hearing that on the end of the record. I loved that. I mean, what a happy way to end such a hardcore, heavy, dark, mean album. And then you hear this blow on a jug, and you're like, wow, what is this? Was that an actual accordion? Was that you playing the accordion there, Bill?
I'm playing the piano, and I was just blowing the jug. It was one of our little party pieces that we do, and somebody left the tape running, and we were fucking around in the studio, and so it ended up on an album, and it's been a talking point for many years now. But it was one of our little things that we do, blow on a jug.
When I was younger, I always thought the lyrics were "Be like me and blow on a joint." When I found out it was blow on a jug, I was like actually kind of disappointed. I was like, yeah, Oh, man, I like blowing out a joint better than a jug. That's his wife.
Well, with that said, let's move on to Technical Ecstasy. Who wants to start that one out?
I love the album cover.
Monte Conner, over to you. Yeah.
I love the album cover on that. The two robots having sex. I thought just perfectly summed up the album title pretty damn well.
I didn't really care for that album cover. I thought it was a little bit... It just didn't fit Black Sabbath to me.
Right.
But,
I got just a little funny personal story I can stick in on this because, as I said, I discovered Sabbath in 77, 78, so Never Say Die was the first record that could come out as a new record. Back then money was really hard, so you couldn't even afford these records, and I would always go to the record store and look at Technical Ecstasy and, just dream about what it was about because I couldn't afford it at the time. It would be many months before I could pick it up, and for some reason, the song title, You Won't Change Me, always struck me as, like, it wound up not being a super heavy song, but it looked to me like it was going to be a really heavy song. So I swear this is a true story. I went to bed one night, and I had a dream, and in my dream, I went to the store and bought Technical Ecstasy and came home and put that song on. And in my dream, I was hearing it, the song play, and Ozzy was singing, and I basically wrote my own Sabbath song because it was a new Sabbath song that I'd never heard, and it's playing in my head with lyrics and everything in my dream. So it's like I basically wrote my own song. It's lost to the annals of history somewhere in my head, but that was always a pretty funny story that I had basically written my own Sabbath song in my head.
I was looking forward to hearing you sing it right now, Monty.
Nah, I don't think so. To me, this record was a pretty big departure for Sabbath.
Definitely.
You had stuff like Rock and Roll Doctor, which was very, let's say, unheavy metal. A track like All Moving Parts Stand Still, which has... David, what's that instrument that we were talking about in it that you could really hear it? It comes to... There's some weird sound in that. You could hear it when they played it live on that broadcast that was on, the Vault, Bill Graham's Vault.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that live version on there? I never even knew, Bill, that you guys played that song live, but David and I found a live show online where you guys play that song.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah, All Moving Parts. And it's awesome. Wow. It's totally awesome.
The only song I remember you did live from that was Dirty Women, and have done pretty often.
Yeah, Dirty Women's great live.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's become like the long-standing live classic from that record that you guys did years later.
Yeah, and that's the one where, Tony still gets to perform a little bit of a solo. And of recently, we've just kind of changed it around yet again. A lot of that with Dirty Women, when we do it live now, I've really tried to pick up some of the older blues playing that I saw a lot of the guys play back in the 60s and stuff that I, like to play as well. And so I feel when we play that live, I feel really latched onto Tony. It's like a trip down memory lane for me in the sense of there's parts that we'll come to that will require what we call a press roll. Again, when the dynamic is way up, and then we just bring it all the way back down. And I like to bring it down with under a cushion of a press roll, which is an execution that would be it's jazz again, and it also reminds me of the old blues players in the mid '60s from the clubs that we played at in England. So in that sense, I kind of romance it a little bit, It's also that's one of those when we were talking about being fit on that at the ending of Dirty Women, I'm pushing 26-inch bass drums. That's a lot of air to push, and that's one where I really have to lay in. I'm laying in pretty hard right through the last 4 minutes of the song. I always feel good energy though when we're up there doing that. I like the placement and the pace. But I thought it was a pretty good song. And it's always been a good stage song. Gone down well.
Yeah.
Definitely an interesting album. Definitely a lot different. I mean, the thing about your albums, particularly from Volume 4 on, each album seemed to have been a drastic change from the following album. And again, I that's how most of the classic bands you talk about, Zeppelin and bands like that, Black Sabbath was every much diverse as a band like Zeppelin were, but you never really got the actual credit for being such a diverse heavy metal band. Tell us how a song like It's Alright came about with you doing the lead vocals.
I think that was one where we really didn't have enough material. We were over in Miami, I think, at the time, recording that one. And it was ours that was pushing on that one. Do It's Alright, man, so put it on there. It's a good song. So, I was really reluctant. I actually went through quite a bit of personal pain behind that because I didn't feel like it was right, because the setup that we have is Ozzy sings, so I felt a bit strange. But at the same time, we were doing different kind of odd things. things that, we're just like picking things out from the air or picking things that were not necessarily associated with any particular groove. And so It's Alright ended up on there. It was nice to do. I mean, we had a nice session and everything. Tony really brought the song up with his guitar solo, so it made it into a nice cake. I thought we got a pretty good track. It's pretty even.
There's even footage of you performing that song.
Yeah, I was going to say, that was when you first did, I think Sabbath very first did promo videos. That was when promo videos, this was obviously pre-MTV, but, Don Kirshner's and other places were playing, as you call, promo videos, lip-sync videos, and you did one for It's Alright and Rock and Roll Doctor, correct, Bill?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
It's Alright pushed to be a single. A lot of drummers then were doing vocals, and the most famous, of course, was Beth with, Peter Criss singing the vocals on the Kiss song, and they, that's one that kind of broke them into the mainstream. Did you feel that song had a chance of breaking Black Sabbath into like the radio market?
Oh, not at all. No. We were just writing probably since Volume 4. All of us had been writing separately. We all had our own musical collections of songs, and there's all kinds of ideas and things like that going on. So It's Alright had been around our family, the band being the family, for quite some time. It was just lying dormant. But it was as simple as I was just saying, put that on there. There was no kind of like thought to say, let's go in this direction or what have you, Yeah, I'm trying to remember all the circumstances right now with Technical Ecstasy. It seemed like it was, I think it might have been hard going. For some reason, I feel like some of these things might have been hard going. Backstreet Kids, I thought, was a fabulous track. I thought that one worked out real well. It seemed like it took us ages to do All Moving Parts Stand Still. We had some of the basic stuff down, but what to do with it, what to do with it lyrically, and I think we had to work on some of these songs on Technical Ecstasy, to bring them up to a good performance level. I'm a little bit not as sharp, maybe, on remembering all of Technical Ecstasy.
When you were singing It's Alright, Bill, at the end there where you go into the falsetto, initially It reminded me of the Beach Boys. Is that your idea?
No, my influences go back a little bit further than that. I remember all the early rock and roll stuff, Platters, Roy Orbison, Everly Brothers, all the guys. I'm just right back in where rock and roll was, so I'm coming from a rock and roll place, and those high falsettos are typical of what one would call rock and roll, especially back in the day, the bebop and that kind of music, It's that same kind of association.
Did you feel this record, though, when recording it, Bill, that it was going to be... Because it always was kind of the outside Black Sabbath record when you talk about the first decade. It was a little bit... And I think probably sales-wise, too. I don't remember as big... I don't know how it sold, but I don't remember it being as... making an impact as your previous records. But it was a little bit on the outside. Did you was that kind of planned, or again, was it just something that just came out like that?
I think it was just the state of mind of where we were all at, I think at this point, what's really important is to remember that the band had been continually touring for years and years and years, and that we were moving into different directions. We were, by now we had families, we were settling down, we even had houses. And we had a life that was starting to emerge. The four of us were not necessarily together as we were in the early days. We were together all the time in the early days. But by the time we did Technical Ecstasy, we were still very much with each other. We didn't see each other necessarily all the time. So there was some separation going on. Not bad separation in a negative way, but it was just the natural course of things. This was a veteran band that had already done so much all over the world. And so I think that, we were just all in different places and not necessarily on the same page when we did Technical Ecstasy, Right. But I think what stands out the most is coming away from the album for a second. The big showstoppers at that point on stage were Dirty Women, Backstreet Kids. When we played Backstreet Kids, and opened that up, it was just like, man, it completely kicked ass. It was so good, and so there were some real show-stopping songs that came from Technical Ecstasy that fans knew about, but are probably not that credited from an album point of view.
True. Well, I mean, you look at songs like Hole in the Sky and Backstreet Kids. I mean, that almost started, I wouldn't say thrash metal, but the speed metal. I mean, it was, Sabbath went from this doom band that was real slow and heavy and doomy into this, real almost aggressive. It almost was borderline, the beginning of thrash metal.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I certainly had fast movement going on. But, Tony's, again, was moving to choppier places, very high speed. I'm just pleased that I could keep up with him, to be honest with you. Because that's quite a challenging track from a drummer's point of view. There's a lot of double bass drum work in Backstreet Kids. There's just a lot of, where I have to hit with him. I have to be with his chops and so on and so forth, and still maintain the bass drum work. And Goose has got such a great bass part running through that song. So it makes, as a drummer, it makes my life a lot easier.
Now I want to mention at this point, I mean, I remember I was too young to go to Black Sabbath shows, but my cousin, he's the one who turned me on to Sabbath. He was giving me cassettes of the band way in their early days. The first album I actually owned was Sabotage. When I remember the day it came out on my 11th birthday, and my mom freaking out because she looked at the album cover, going, "I'm not buying you this." But I ended up getting it, and from there on, I always kind of followed what the tours. I would always look in the paper and see the bands you would tour with, and I remember it was real controversial. I think it was that tour, or David, you could correct me. Maybe it was Never Say Die. It was Black Sabbath and the Ramones. Remember that?
No, I was going to tell Monty that all I saw for this album was like Monty's Wet Dream, because the opening act, at least in Detroit, was Black Oak, Arkansas.
Oh,
yeah.
I know at least in LA you did a show with the Ramones, and that was when punk and metal were like at each other's throats. And even though Ramones was more of a street punk band, it wasn't like the British punk, it created a lot of controversy. But my cousin actually went to the show. He said it was an amazing show. Again, I was too young. Do you remember that show, Bill?
I can't remember it. I honestly can't. I can just vaguely, when it's talked about, I can vaguely remember where that was at. I guess there was friction, or one of the things that I didn't like about punk was the attitude that they were better than every other band, right. And that came from a few individuals, but that, I felt like telling them to fuck themselves, but but for the most part, I think the punk movement was extremely important to rock music. You can hear it in today's hardcore music for sure. So it's like a very, very, very important time. But I just didn't like some of the arrogance. It was antagonising. We'd seen enough arrogance where we came from. Coming from the Birmingham and Aston, everybody knew arrogance. Not only that, but Sabbath went through 2 years before where we'd talk about making contact with the audience. Shit, man. Sometimes on some of these gigs, there was more time spent on the floor fighting everybody than there was actually playing on the stage. It was a common event in 1968, 1969.
Was that in America or in England? Because I know England was
everywhere.
Really?
Everywhere.
Was it like bikers
everywhere.
or like who did? I know you kind of attracted the counterculture, I guess, kind of hippie crowd, but you also had like a lot of bikers. And was it between them or what was?
It was usually with the security.
Oh yeah.
No, it's usually with the security or some of the kids. If somebody was beating up on somebody, then Ozzy would jump off the stage and beat the crap out of him. Or Tony would jump off the stage. I used to throw my drums at people. There's a lot of stuff. Just crazy. It was that stuff, it was like the mosh pit, of 1970 or 1969. But a lot of bands were, The Who, there's a lot of bands that went real crazy. So, we've no disrespect to punk, but punk kind of claimed that as their own, and they're mistaken. I just wish they'd give a little credit to the bands that were doing it before they were doing it, But I think that a lot of the punk bands had some real taste and were great players and said some really important stuff. But I think punk is so important to today's music, and that's where I really validate punk music.
Yeah, well, I agree with you there, Bill, with what you said about how a lot of people don't realize some of those early metal shows, and I think a lot of it, because a lot of it wasn't really filmed then. I mean, you didn't have the MTV and whatever, and David could probably know, because I'm sure David was probably in the middle of those. David probably had a few drumsticks thrown at him, right, David?
No. I was kicking back with a joint somewhere over on the side of the side of the auditorium, just enjoying everything.
Hells Angels had their favourite songs, but I mean that's what it was like. That was the climate anyway. They were with the Stones. They were with most of the big bands that came through. So there's all kinds of people, and most of them were just banging heads. I mean, for me, I think for Sabbath, in 1968, we saw the white jacket and the turtleneck sweater turn into leather, and t-shirts, and we saw the whole thing change in front of us. We saw clothing change literally in front of us as we showed up every night, and things became different. And the whole headbanging thing, started back as early as 1969. Back in the Northeast, everybody was down in unison, just every fucker banging their, all the hair and everything, man. And it was great. It's so fantastic to play to music where everybody's just bobbing their heads, just like the whole thing's rocking, It goes back a long way. And
well, definitely. You see a lot of the early footage from England and even in Germany and France. Like I said, the 1970 France show, when they scoped the audience, it's like crazy. I mean, you never see like the American audience. I'm sure a lot of people were drugged out and whatnot, but just insane to see like some of the stuff happening in Germany and France and England. It seemed like it was much different than perhaps it was here in the States.
It was more riotous sometimes. Like early days in Germany would be less predictable. There's in Europe. There is unpredictability. Now, I'm not saying that by saying that, I'm not saying that the United States doesn't have predictability, but the United States was more somewhat controlled, possibly because of the presence of so many police officers. In Europe, anyway, there's always been a vanguard of more outrageous or more to the right or to the left demonstration where you didn't quite know if something was going to go off and explode. There's always that thing, especially in some of our earlier touring. Through especially in 1969 when we were doing a lot of the festivals in Europe. You never quite knew which way it was going to go. German audiences had become quite volatile, whereas American audiences were a little bit more, they were crazy motherfuckers. In America, there's no question about that. My heart goes out to them, and I love every single one of them. But they're a little bit less prone to, a whole lot of violence at a concert. And so, but sometimes, especially in the earlier years, there was definitely a little bit of difference between American and European audiences.
Well, I figured we'd hit Never Say Die, and then I don't know if you wanted to touch on at all Heaven and Hell, Bill, because I know you played on that. If you want to end it with that, it's up to you. I don't know if there was anything else any of you wanted to add about technical ecstasy, or before we move on.
I don't think so. I had a bit of a struggle, talking with you guys. I was really having to think about technical ecstasy. I had to try to remember some things, so I had a little bit of a struggle with that one. But we can move on. I don't know whether I want to talk about Heaven and Hell, to be honest. At least possibly not in this interview that we're doing. If you want me to, of course, I'll do that.
Bill, actually, we planned on doing this as the first decade. We were going to end it with the Ozzy-era, so to speak, with Never Say Die. I think that'd probably be most appropriate. I just didn't know if there was anything you particularly want to add. But no, if you don't want to do it, I think it's best we leave it at the Never Say Die.
Yeah, because then it's the original band. It's more respectful to ours, And,
right.
He's a man that's very close to my heart, I spoke to him just the other day. Actually, I spoke to him yesterday. He's just, oh God, I swear, just unbelievable.
Do you talk to Ozzy about what he's doing with the variety show and stuff like that? Does he kind of share that with you, or when you talk, is it mostly just about like the old days kind of thing?
No, we talk about right now. We talk about what's going on with both of us right now. We usually talk about the kids. He talks about his kids all the time. We just talk about how we're doing, how we're really doing. We don't bullshit each other, so.
Right.
You know, we just have a good rap. You know, we talk all the time. You know, I think he called in yesterday about noon. But we had a nice rap. We rapped for about half an hour. So.
How many kids do you have, Bill?
I got 3. We're actually working on a 4th. We're in the foster adopt program, and my wife and I are licensed foster adopt, parents. We're actually looking right now at a particular child that we've been looking at for some time. So there might be another one on the way pretty soon.
Are any of your kids in music?
Yeah, 2 of them. My oldest son, fucking brilliant, and my daughter's been working on an album now for a couple of years. She's like me, it's a bit slow. My son, he makes an album in 3 months. He's done. He moves on. Next one. None of his work has been developed yet, but he just blows me away.
Is he a drummer too?
He plays drums, but he's a guitarist, singer, keyboard player. He plays about 5, 6 different instruments. His production is incredible. But he plays drums. He's been playing drums since he was a baby, It was hard not to in our house. So,
Is his music available?
Yes, I could actually get you some things. I'd have to call him first, but I could get you some things, a couple of things he just sent over to me, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Oh, that's very nice. Very nice.
Well, Monty, why don't you kick off Never Say Die, since you said this was the first Black Sabbath album you bought?
Yeah, it was the first album I bought as a new record, and they had premiered the record in New York City on WNEW, speaking of radio, of course. A famous DJ named Dennis Elsis, and the 2 songs he premiered were the songs Never Say Die and A Hard Road. So those were the first 2 tracks I heard from the record, and to me, those are still my favorite song. Those are just the 2 standout tracks. Obviously, Never Say Die is a complete Sabbath classic. To me, it's like as heavy as Backstreet Kids, but just a little bit more epic and a little bit more vintage Sabbath sounding. And then Hard Road, not the heaviest song in the world, but there's just something so, something very soothing about that song to me. I can't really put it into words. I've come to also really appreciate Junior's Eyes over the years.
Oh, yeah.
Johnny Blade was a track I liked a lot at the beginning just because it was so heavy. It was like the heaviest track on the record after Never Say Die, although that's not a track I really go back to much these days. I'm more about like Junior's Eyes, A Hard Road. And of course, Bill, Swinging the Chain was one I always liked. I just thought, it was a heavy-ass track, and it was the only heavy song you really sang in Sabbath.
Yeah.
But, I've read a lot of stories about the making of this record, Bill, and it seems like Ozzy was kind of like half there and wasn't showing up and was like kind of had one foot out the door already. So it seemed like, from what I've read, a lot of this stuff was kind of literally written that morning. You'd go rehearse it in the morning in the studio and cut it at night. And, some of the songs wound up being instrumentals and songs that you sang on simply because Ozzy wasn't around.
Yeah, this was a difficult time for us, When we were, especially, when we did Junior's Eyes, that song was like really, really, really important to him. It took a while to put that together. We actually, coming back to Field Farm, we went back to Field Farm where my wife and I originally lived, and we did most of the mapping out and the rehearsing of Junior's Eyes at Field Farm. We had all the grooves and everything, and I thought it was really, really good what we were doing. And it just seemed to fit the day. It worked for wherever we were all at, And but he was having an incredibly difficult time. He had a major loss in his family and was trying to recover from that. So yeah, there were a few things that went topsy-turvy for a while. I think that's what Never Say Die is one of those albums again where everybody, including Ozzy, we all overcame. It's like how can I explain it? It's like the gig. People say to me, well, what was the best gig that you ever did? And I said, the one gig where we were in the middle of nowhere. We hadn't seen our home for 6 months or 9 months. We'd had no food for 2 or 3 days. We were all sick with the flu. And then somebody said, you're on in 10 minutes. And we would get up, literally so sick and so ill, get up on stage and play our asses off and come back and then collapse on the same couches that we'd been lying on prior to going onto the stage. And it's that kind of effort, it's that kind of performance that this band has. It has that. Well, that's how I would equivalize with Never Say Die. I think it was one where it's like, okay, we need to overcome whatever's going on. We need to move forward and make this album work. So there was everybody jumped in, everybody brought ideas to the table. everything was like so busy on this album.
Just prior to this, I don't know whether you're comfortable talking about this, Bill, but just prior to this, I mean, it's well known that Ozzy had left the band, and you briefly brought Dave Walker, who was in Savoy Brown, in to sing. You actually started to move forward on that, right?
Yes, we did. We asked Davey to come in. You know, we'd seen Dave on the road over the years with Savoy Brown, and we knew Dave from way back as well with the, I've forgotten the name of Dave's original band. He was with his brother, the Red Caps. And the Red Caps in Birmingham were like a really, really cool band in the 1960s. So inevitably, Dave had a total blues bass voice, really nice guy, you know, great singer. So it was natural to think, okay, well, what are we going to do, you know? And nobody wanted to really have the choice. I mean, even Dave, you know, he knew it was an uncomfortable situation. But he came over, and he was a soldier, you know, and he played the game, and he was great. But you know, we did a TV show, and we did do Junior's Eyes, and it was very, very strange doing Junior's Eyes with, you know, because that was Ozzy's song. That was Oz, you know, and you know, pretty much about his father. Well, some parts of it were about his father. And so it felt strange, and you know, and in the end, I let Dave know. I said, I don't, you know, we can't really carry on, Dave. And
was there footage available? Actually, you said it was for a TV show. Was there actually footage of him singing that?
The BBC might have something in the archives. Yeah, it was a BBC
well,
TV
I got that
show.
on CD, that performance.
Oh, really? You do?
Yeah.
I've got Ozzy. He's got everything here, doesn't
he? Between David and Monte.
Probably why he's got a record company. But that was the story with Dave. I mean, you know, he came in and Ozzy rallied to the flag. You know, I can remember sitting down with Oz back in the Mono Valley again, and we were trying to come up with a title of a song. I can remember he'd come in with his scratch paper, I'd have my scratch paper, and we were sitting down on the patio where we'd sat so many times before over the years, you know, and down by the river, River Mono. Between us, we got the title, Never Say Die, and so we got that much at least, you know, and yeah, we had to squeeze it out. Tony's some kind of a hero for me, you know. We were up in, we did Johnny Blade actually in Toronto, and Tony started out with that riff, and again, you know, when me and Tony, we come from the old days of the Shadows and Apache and, you know, the Ventures, and you know, so we're from that era. You know, so a lot of our early influences were early rock and roll. And when he started up with that, and I fucking flew to my drums. We were in this enormously cold theater. I got to my drums and I just started putting in that drumming line that you hear today. And it reminded me so much. It was just so good, so powerful. It reminded me so much of of ourselves when we were kids, when we were just 16 years old, man, and we used to play at the jams. You know, and so that's where that thing comes from on the top of Johnny Blade. You know, there's some nice pieces on this album.
Now, when you recorded this, Bill, I know you used the Rolling Stone mobile unit, and you probably spent more time on this record than any other previous Sabbath record. By far the most produced record, I would say. I mean, again, a brilliant record, and again, very instrumental, songwriting and arrangement wise. How do you feel the production played a role in this record? I know Ozzy had said in the past that he thought it was too overproduced and there was too much time spent in the studio. How do you feel about the recording process and production?
Yeah, I thought it was. I actually, it was quite hard work because there were some times when Oz was not available. You know, so on this particular album, I did a little bit of ghostwriting. You know, hoping that, you know, to try and encourage us to, you know, for some ideas and what have you. We both penned out, originally when we were in Toronto, we both penned out Johnny Blade, you know, made Johnny Blade into a character. And like I said, all of us were really, you know, trying to do our best to cover all bases. You know, one of our guys was injured, so to speak, and it's like, okay, let's do whatever we can do to get this job done, you know. It's where we were, and so in that sense, I'm very much at peace with it. You know, I mean, the feel on Hard Road, the feel on that, I have to give credit to the rhythm section, and that doesn't mean I'm not giving credit to everybody else, but the feel that me and Geezer put underneath Hard Road, I just love that. we hadn't done a rhythm like that since Hole in the Sky. So we put that feel on Hard Road, and then those bass drums just drop in exactly where they're supposed to go. And I just love the dynamic again, the shape of the song and the way that it moves. It's very good, I mean, I can hear it in today's music. I can hear in today's music way more thrashy and way more loud. But back then I could hear those, just the dropping in of the feel of it, So yeah, there's a lot of really nice spots for me on this album.
Yeah, great record and very influential. It was one of those records I remember buying it. It was such a departure from what you would expect from Sabbath, and it was one of those albums that really took a long time to grow on you, and it keeps us, which is a sign of a great album. It wasn't really immediate with me when I got. I mean, certain songs like Never Say Die and Johnny Blade and Shockwave was pretty immediate, but then the others it took me a while to grow on me. Was that with you too, David and Monty, or was it pretty immediate with you guys?
It was pretty immediate for me, but I find just as I get older and my tastes mature, when you're a young kid, you want everything fast and heavy. And I remember at the time, albums like Technical Ecstasy and Never Say Die weren't really heavy enough for me. Like I wanted the heavier stuff. But as an adult and someone with more mature tastes, I can go back and get a lot more enjoyment out of those two records than I did as some 17-year-old kid that wanted to hear Metallica and Slayer. You know what I'm saying? So I think those albums have really held up well for me, especially, and to me, I can enjoy them more than I did back when they first came out.
David?
Yeah, for me, this was a much less of an immediate album than the albums prior to that. But sometimes I find that the albums that you get immediately, sometimes they don't last as long as the ones that you have to listen to 3, 4, 5 times to really sort of get into and find a way in. And this is one of those albums for me that once I had to keep listening to it and really explore the nuances of the album. And once I got that, this became, just an absolute must-have Desert Island disc for me. Obviously, I want to ask Bill about the last 2 songs on the album because at the time, after listening to, going through the sequence and listening to Over to You, and then Breakout to come in with the horns and swinging the chain with the whole jazz feel and Bill singing. Tell us about those 2 songs.
Well, I did some shadow work on Over to You in the sense of some melodies and some lyrics and things like that. And we were actually really up against the gun as far as the finishing time. We were supposed to start an American tour in Milwaukee. I believe it was Milwaukee, the very next day. And I can remember still being in the studios trying to set up a nice vocal that could work where Ozzy could, trying to throw in the ball, so to speak, and he'll throw the ball back. Or he'll throw it, or he'll throw all the ideas out, and it'll just give him some, he'll find his own way. He's quite capable of doing that. Sometimes you just have to throw the ball one way or throw the ball back, and it just works. But I can remember on Over to You, having to get ready. Well, I was in the studio actually until 8 o'clock that morning. And then Graham Wright, who was with me, said, "Bill, we have to get a plane, man. Otherwise, we ain't going to make the opening. We ain't going to get to Milwaukee." So that was tight, just jumping on an aircraft, flying to America, and then having to be ready to go onto the stage. But that's how tight that was. I think that with the beginning of Swinging the Chain, I like what we'd done. In hindsight, I consider it's completely off the wall. It's something that definitely is not part of what we would call metal or heavy metal. Or I just liked it, but I think I'd lost the core of where we all were. If you like. But I know I was really big on that. I was really big on that brass section. And we all, settled down to it. I think when Ozzy first heard it, I think he said it fucking sucked or something like that. God bless him.
It is such a heavy song, though. I mean, it's got that jazzy feel, but you listen to it now, it's heavy in a whole different way. But, I mean, the guitar riffs,
very heavy.
And your vocals sound so heavy and dark.
I used to love that track as a kid because that was one of the heavier tracks on the record to me. And I love the whole end part where it goes into that heavy riff.
Yeah.
And you're doing that, chanty vocal with it. I love that.
Yeah, on that one, I really didn't want to do that song again, kind of like It's All Right. We needed to finish this album, Tony had some nice chops, you know, and it was a shame to see those just go by the wayside, you know, kind of like, oh, you know, this is good stuff, but it's like, we're not doing anything with it. So, you know, that's how the song came about. We literally wrote it, I think, down in Monmouth Studios. And I like the fact that we put the big band on it. I forget the name of the arranger who did that. But we, you know, all of us had the idea. We made sure that it's like, yeah, this is what we want in the band. You know, we want it to be fucking heavy. You know, we want it to be very heavy.
That was Will Malone, right?
Yes, it was. It was Will Malone. Yeah, he arranged the strings and he was able to pierce. He got it. You know, it's like, oh yeah, I got it. Okay, Sabbath, yeah, brass, okay, you know. So we got it, you know, because we didn't want any, you know, like Ted Heath on there or anything. No disrespect to Ted Heath. We'd have to be, you know, for all of us, I'm sure, you know, in that kind of confine. Tony had already written out, you know, an incredible blackboard arrangement already. So, you know, it's just like putting that fucking orchestra on the top. So I think everybody did great with that. I think it's a great piece of work. In hindsight, maybe it ought not to have been on that album, but I think we were just doing the best we could at that point. You know, we were coming to our end.
Who was John Elstar that played the harmonica on that track? Was he a friend of yours?
Oh, God.
This is one of those fuzzy areas again, right?
Yeah, it's a fuzzy, yeah. What was his name again?
John Elstar, Elstar.
Is that the harmonica on Swinging the Chain?
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was me that played that.
This wasn't your pseudonym?
I don't know. Oh shit! I don't. You know what? I don't know. Because I play harmonica badly most of the time. That's probably why we probably got a harmonica player in there.
Yeah.
You know what? I can't. For the life of me, I don't know who played harmonica on there. No.
I always thought it was Ozzy, because doesn't Ozzy play on the Wizard on the first album?
Yeah. Ozzy plays harmonica as well. Yeah.
That's him on the Wizard, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
Just to close, I think Swinging the Chain is the perfect closing for an album like Never Say Die. That's just so unique and different, and then to have that song just close it in just an unexpected way, I think that's what adds to the brilliance of that album and to Black Sabbath in general.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But why don't we kind of end it here? Let's just end with, if you guys want to add anything before we do end it.
I was wondering that you guys might have wanted to talk about heavy metal music in general, or do you want to leave that for another time, another place, or...
I am, Bill. I'm very fascinated by the fact that you're so completely up to date, like a 16-year-old teenager on this stuff. I think it's just amazing. I think it's awesome. Yeah, I mean, you can probably recite more Dimmu Borgir album titles than I can.
Well, I don't know about that. You know, some of the spelling, they definitely throw me with their spelling. I think that the transition from just from Metallica and Oz, in the 1980s, and then so many other bands that started to show up. I'm just so high on the fact that we have just so many good bands now that are just playing absolutely outstanding music. For me, it's like a new lease on life, and just when I think it was you that said earlier, Monty, about you wanted to hear something loud, when you were 17, and I too have those imperious urges. One of the songs that just blew me away a couple of months ago when it first came out was Opeth's Heir Apparent, and I don't know if you guys have heard that track, but the way it comes in is just like fucking unbelievable. It sounds like the end of the earth coming in. And that's what I like. I miss that. I miss that with Tony and with Geezer. I miss it a lot. It's it's like, oh God, and I really miss playing with the guys too. But I'm not saying that we won't play again, but right now I do miss them when we're not playing together. But just things like that, or Celtic Frost, or when I hear the depth that these guys go into, it just blows me away. So I think that. The metal music of today is so fucking healthy, and it's so diverse. I mean, it's just going everywhere now, and I'm just blown away.
Do you listen on CD, or are you into downloading? What are you?
I listen on CD, and I don't download for personal reasons, but I everything I just go out and I buy the CDs just like a fan would, and I just ask around, and I talk to other people, and, you know, hey, Bill, did you check out so-and-so, or have you heard this? So word of mouth, you know, and, you know, and I get it, I know that I'm really privileged because I get to see all the bands when they're on stage, but I get to go on stage with them and watch them, you know. That's something that's really incredible for me.
I was going to ask you, Bill, I know last time we had met, you were in the studio doing your solo stuff with Straws, and you were in there producing, and you obviously have a lot of knowledge about the recording studio, about recording. Have you ever considered producing any new bands or getting involved with some of the new bands, either songwriting-wise or production-wise?
I've thought about it, and I've done a little bit. I've dabbled a little bit with that. I'm working on a hardcore album of my own right now. As a matter of fact, this very morning I was going through some of the plans on it. There's a couple of people that you guys know that I'm hoping will come and guest. They're real metal players, and I'm hoping they're going to come over and come and play a little bit on some of the newer stuff. So, but I'll keep you posted on all that, you know, as well. But I've dabbled in, you know, dabbled with people and have gone in and have kind of made some changes to the sonics and, you know, what have you. So I dabble around, you know, I'm always in and out, poking my nose in and out of different things and stuff like that. But I haven't come to terms with actually producing a metal band. I'm still trying to get my own feathers and my own, you know, my own self in order. You know, I think if I can have good metal performances that I've done, then I think I can, you know, at that point I can maybe, you know, move on and see what I can do with other bands. But I would love to write metal songs for other bands as well. It's one of my favorite things to do is to write, and I'm continually writing all the time. I don't stop. It drives me crazy.
I do remember, Bill, when I was in the studio with you doing the interview, Joey from Slipknot, and this was quite a few years ago. He was in the studio there, and a huge fan of yours. Was he actually working with you in the studio at that point? Did he do some drums on it?
I think at the time, Joey just popped down, actually. Talking about being fans, I mean, I'm a huge fan of him, you know. I can't believe what that guy does. No, you know, I mean, Joey's just, you know, in fact, most of the guys in Slipknot, we're just really good friends, and I just love what they play, and I'm a major fan of Slipknot. Major. I love the band. I've probably seen them play live at least 20 times.
Wow, that's as many times as me.
You signed the
band. Bill, when you were growing up, like, you know, obviously you were talking about certain Sabbath songs before, like Backstreet Kids, being challenging to play. They were a little bit faster. And then, obviously, you must have heard, like, in 1983 when Kill 'Em All came out, you know, and a song like Motor Breath on that record at the time was, like, the fastest thing ever. The same way that, like, Motorhead Ace of Spades in 1980 was the fastest thing to date. Could you have ever, in a million years, imagined the speeds in like stuff like Slipknot? Like, could you have ever seen that coming, that it would get to that level? And can it go further than that at this point without being a drummer?
I think it can definitely go further because these guys are developing it. I have every confidence in the new drummers, the way that they're emerging. And yes, I can't see why it can't go through the ceiling. You know, it's already through the roof anyway. Right. But I think I saw a little bit of it because there was some of that stuff I was touching on myself, and a lot of my grooves, you know, like for instance when we did my first solo album, had a lot of real fast-paced bass drum work on it. You know, there was one that we did, the Mobile Shooting Gallery, and that one's just got, you know, 30-second note bass drums, and we did that back in '89, I think. So you can see the movement coming along. However, in the last, the last 8 to 9 years, I've been completely blown away, totally blown away by what they're doing, especially rhythm sections, what the bass is doing, what the drums are doing, and how they've, you know, it's just like, oh my God, you know. So no, to me it was a huge surprise. I think it's great. When I listen to Motorhead, I listen to that and it's like, okay, you know, and I feel like I can still jump in there and play Ace of Spades or, you know, something like that, you know, or even Gung Ho, you know, with Anthrax. But, you know, I'll listen to Strapping Young Lad, Gene Hoglan.
I listen to Gene.
I look at Gene, I just go, holy fucking shit, holy shit. He reminds me so much of the very early days with John Bonham, because Gene seems very light on his feet and light on his touch, and so was Bonham.
What's crazy about Gene, and this is also, I don't know if you've ever seen Raymond from Fear Factory play, but both of these guys are amazing drummers, but they don't look like they're working hard when they play.
Yeah.
So if you've actually seen Gene play, he doesn't look like he's putting any effort into it. Yeah, whereas you take a guy like Roy Mayorga from Soulfly, or who's also in Stone Sour, and you watch that guy play, and he's just a total showman. Anyway, it's funny that you mentioned that about Gene.
Yeah,
he
it's
is
effortless
an amazing drummer,
when Gene plays. It looks like it's effortless.
Totally effortless. Yeah.
And Bill, to go back, so you know, I've known Gene since he was about 14 years old when he first started drums, and I'll tell you, if it wasn't for drummers like you, Gene probably wouldn't be playing the way he does today. So it's your drumming and your style of drumming that influence, I would say, 80-90% of these extreme metal drummers out there. Absolutely.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, I'm honored that you would say that. I mean, a lot of these guys now, they're my friends, and I support them and support their, who they are and who they are as players. But whenever I get a chance, I'll try and see Gene play whenever I can, or anybody else when the guys come through. If we get all the gothic bands coming through, I try to pop in and see them if I'm not working. So I just think it's such a great climate today, and I think we're really fortunate to have, that this didn't die. This stayed alive, and not only did it stay alive, but it stayed alive and got better. I mean, it's just so much good stuff now, so versatile. I mean, a lot of these bands, Lamb of God's new albums drive me fucking nuts, man. And I can't find a bad track. I'm not really looking for a bad track, but it's like everything is so on, and I'm like going, my God. Yeah.
Have you heard the new Mastodon record?
Yeah, I just got it. We played it on the last radio show. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty cool stuff, right? Definitely.
Oh, it's fucking magnificent. I think we played 3 tracks already on the radio show last month. Mastodon.
Can you hear your radio show on the internet?
I think so, because my wife checks in.
Yeah, I'd love to be able to hear that. So maybe we can ask Lisa for some information about how to hear it.
And that Mastodon drummer, he's all full of jazz. He reminds me of Mitch in the old days. Mitch Mitchell.
Well, Bill and Monty, if you want, we should maybe do, if you're up for it, Bill, we could do a future podcast where you guys just talk about new bands, because you know a lot more than I do. And maybe you and...
Anytime you're up for it, I'd love to do that, Bill.
That would be great.
Yeah, I would definitely want to be on that. I would be honored to be a part of that.
But before we end, though, I just want to end with saying, now you keep talking, when talking about Black Sabbath, like it is still current. Do you find yourself getting back together with Tony Geezer and Ozzy and recording some new material anytime in the near future?
I think if the climate's right and everybody feels comfortable, I would love to be part of an album or continuing to tour. Yeah, they're very current in me. I never talk to them in past tense. They're because they're here and now. I mean, I know that Tony and Terry right now are running around with Ronnie, on Vinny, but life still carries on. So I do miss playing with Tony, and I miss playing with Terry. And obviously I miss playing with Oz. Period. So I would love to always be able to do something with them. So yeah, it continues on for me. I have a tremendous amount of hope there.
All right. Well, David, are you still there, David?
I am still here. I am still here. Well, I wasn't going to comment about all the newer stuff since you guys are much more hip to this than me. And like Clint Eastwood said in Dirty Harry, a man's got to know his limitations. I figured I'd let you guys go off on that stuff. But yeah, I'm still here. And Bill, all I can tell you is that we would love to hear you play again in that context. Nothing would please us more.
Great. Yeah, me too. I'm obviously very passionate towards them all, and and I still love playing. Yeah. Thanks, guys. Is everybody pretty much done for now, or?
Yeah, I think we got it covered.
Well, there you go, gentlemen. That was absolutely incredible. That was the one and only legendary Bill Ward, along with the great Monte Conner and David Tedds, talking about Black Sabbath, the early years. Wow, I don't mean to pat myself on the back, but I got to say, that, I believe, is one of the greatest heavy metal discussions ever recorded. That was just an incredible conversation, and just many things go out to Bill Ward. As you could tell just by listening to him, such a great guy, and not to mention one of the greatest drummers in all of hard rock and metal music. And just such a terrific guy. I can't give enough thanks to Bill, and also thanks to Monty and David for being a part of this conversation. Well, that happens to be the longest Shockwave Skull Session podcast to date. Hope you enjoyed that. That was about a 2.5 hour discussion there. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it off here. I want to thank you guys all for the support, and thanks for listening. And please spread the word, man. Spread the word on the podcast. This is, of course, the Shockwave Skull Sessions podcast, heard at roadrunnerrecords.com/Skull Sessions. If you go to the Roadrunner Records main site, you can just go to a Skull Sessions under the artist page. Check out all the great stuff they have there at roadrunnerrecords.com. And also be sure to check us out on the Classic Metal Show. For scheduling, you could go to the classicmetalshow.com or cmsradio.net, and you can check out the schedule when the Shockwave Skull Sessions is featured on that great show. And be sure to support those guys, some great guys at the Classic Metal Show. So with that said, man, we're going to go ahead and close this. Once again, thanks again. Send those emails. I really want to know what you think of this podcast, so send them in to me at shockwaveskullsessions@gmail.com. Thanks again for supporting, and we will see you next time.